Back on the record in the Simpson matter. Defendants again present before the court with his counsel, Mr. Shapiro, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Douglas, Mr. Bailey. People represented by Ms. Clark. What happened to Mr. Darden? All right, Mr. Douglas, Ms. Clark, you had a matter you wanted to take up before we invite the jurors to rejoin us.
We are going to be stipulating to the admissibility of the cell phone records that were subpoenaed from AirTouch, but the stipulation that was previously framed needs to be reworked a little bit, and then we will present that to the court. And I wanted to indicate to counsel that before I was looking for a clean copy of the phone records for the limo, and I now have them, and I'd like to submit these records in lieu of the ones previously given, which had markings on them.
All right, and that was People's Exhibit
148?
Mrs. Robertson, People's 148, was that the cell phone records? All right. Then we'll substitute, if there's no objection, Mr. Douglas will substitute the clean copy for 148. All right, we've now been rejoined by Mr. Darden. All right, Mr. Douglas, anything else we need to take up before we invite the jurors to join us?
I do have a matter, Your Honor, that I do think merits some concern and attention by the court. Your Honor, as the court will recall, on Monday, there had been an objection lodged to a question asked by Ms. Clark of Mr. Kaland. The question concerned whether or not Mr. Kaland had been told by Mr. Simpson that he had had an angry argument with his former wife earlier that day. There had been an objection lodged by Mr. Shapiro arguing that a good faith basis for that question had not existed, and there had been an offer of proof made by Ms. Clark at sidebar. I've had occasion, Your Honor, last night to review those particular records and also to review a transcript of the sidebar hearing, which has been covered quite broadly in many of the media yesterday. And I'm troubled, Your Honor, by some of the representations that were made and that apparently formed the basis for the court to overrule Mr. Shapiro's objection to the good faith basis for Ms. Clark having asked the question. I am referring specifically, Your Honor, to references that Ms. Clark made that there had been a witness that would testify that Mr. Simpson on that afternoon of June the 12th had been angry and yelling, and that there was a suggestion that the only conversation that their records confirmed his having at about the time that he was at the Riviera Country Club was in fact a conversation that he had had with Nicole Brown Simpson. And specifically, there was a colloquy between the court and Ms. Clark where the court asked, so there's only one cell phone call on his records that afternoon? Ms. Clark responds, that would match the time that he was at the country club when this witness could have seen him. The court then asks, when you say match the time, I mean, are there other cell phone calls in the afternoon? Ms. Clark responds, other cell phone calls, but not within the time frame when he was at the country club. You know what I mean? And the court responds, Your Honor, in reviewing the cell phone records of Mr. Simpson on that day, I noted that there were 7 particular calls that occurred on his cell phone between 2:12 in the afternoon and 2:24 in the afternoon. That would have been the time frame that he was at the country club. Of those 7 calls, the third of the 7 was the 4-minute call to Nicole Brown Simpson, about which she referred, Ms. Clark referred. That meant, Your Honor, that there were 6 other calls of maybe 1 or 2-minute duration that were within the time frame that could well have been one of the calls when the witness supposedly saw Mr. Simpson on the phone, but is directly contrary to the suggestion of Ms. Clark that there was only one call that occurred within the time frame when he was at the country club. I'm also troubled, Your Honor, because in reviewing a statement from that witness that provided the basis, I'm sure, for Ms. Clark to argue that she had a good faith belief that Mr. Simpson was angry and was yelling on that conversation, I see that there was no reference at all in the entire police statement that Mr. Simpson was yelling, that he was very angry. Indeed, the only statement that is written is that OJ appeared, serious conversation, stern face, different face, striking a different OJ. And we had an occasion to speak with the witness herself yesterday evening, and when she was informed that there was a suggestion that she would testify that Mr. Simpson was angry and was yelling, she was somewhat disappointed that her statements to the police could be so misconstrued, because she referred to the fact that typically when Mr. Simpson would greet this individual, he would call her honey bunny or something, some sort of endearing term. And on that particular day, he was simply engaged in some sort of conversation and did not acknowledge her in that typical way. And that was the only sense that she was attempting to convey in terms of there being a different OJ, but that he was never very angry, he was never yelling. I am then, therefore, Your Honor, troubled by this error, because it appears that it was the representations that gave the court It appeared that it was the representation that gave the court the belief that the question being asked was in good faith, and that there was, in fact, a basis for her to suggest in front of the jury to Mr. Kalin that there had been an argument between Mr. Simpson and Ms. Brown Simpson. The call that occurred was only a 4-minute call. We have reason to believe that the call concerned simply an arrangement of tickets for the recital between Mr. Simpson and Ms. Brown Simpson, who had, in fact, the tickets in her possession at that time. There were 6 other calls that occurred within the same time frame. There appears to be a misrepresentation to the court. I would argue, Your Honor, that this misrepresentation to the court, given that it occurred in a question that was posed to Mr. Kalin, to which there was an objection, merits some sort of a stern remedy. I would argue, Your Honor, that the remedy that we would seek for this transgression would be, first, a stern admonishment to Ms. Clark to be very careful in her questioning in front of the jury. Second, that there be an admonishment to the jury that lawyers must have a good faith basis before asking a particular question to a witness, and the court finds that there was a question that was asked of Mr. Kalin concerning Mr. Simpson apparently being engaged in an argument with his wife that was not asked in good faith, and that the jury is directed to disregard the question and the implications of the question because it was offered in bad faith. And I do think, Your Honor, with all due respect, that this is a transgression that merits some sort of a financial sanction so as to fully impress upon everyone in this case the obligations to play fair, and that it is clear from my personal experience, I know, that a financial sanction certainly catches one's attention. The court has suggested its new policy of imposing sanctions for speaking objections, and I think that that has resulted in there having been a great shortage of speaking objections now. And I think, and I'm not one who freely and easily asks the court to impose sanctions on another counsel of a financial nature, but I think this is not the first occasion that we have witnessed occurrences of this kind before the jury. I am troubled by that. And I would hope that something could be done so that we could obviate the need for these sorts of occurrences to be raised in the future.
Thank you, Counsel. Mr. Darden?
Can I show you the phone bill?
Can I show you the statement?
Sure. Thank you.
And Your Honor, if I may, very briefly, it's been reminded to me that the statement of the witness suggested that the conversation had occurred at approximately 4 o'clock on that evening, and as the court will see by looking at the phone records, there was no cellular phone call made at approximately 4 o'clock that day.
Which is our point exactly. Ms. Artunian could not be exact on the time in which she observed the defendant upset and animated while talking on the cellular phone at the Riviera Country Club, but we do know that he was there at 2:18 in the afternoon. As for those 1.0, 2.0 minute calls, the cellular phone company can tell you, like they've told us, that that doesn't mean that he spoke to anyone. And anyone who has a cellular phone can tell you that as well. We stand by our representation. We've talked to Ms. Artunian when she testifies. Her testimony will be very much as I believe as we represent it to the court. Ms. Artunian called us last night and told us that the defense had called her and asked her about the statement, and she said she stood by her statement. And that apparently was the gist of the conversation that she had with the defense. On the issue of good faith, I have sat here throughout this trial and I have seen many, many instances of bad faith questioning on the part of the defense. However, I recognize that that sometimes is simply the nature of criminal defense litigation. Time and time again, the defense has suggested that the blood at Rockingham was planted by the police, when even they know by the defendant's own statement that he was bleeding at Rockingham prior to leaving for the airport that night. Every time they make that suggestion to this jury and to this court, they make it in bad faith. This is a non-issue.
All right, thank you, counsel. I'd like to read carefully the statement and review the phone records when I have the opportunity. I would like to use the time with Mr. Park, however, in front of the jury at this time. And since this issue does not involve this particular witness, I'll take this up at a later time.
Your Honor, would the court like to see a copy of the sidebar where that portion was referenced?
Yes, that would help me immensely too. If you'll give that to me later. All right, but I do want a copy of each of these items. Just this page of the phone record. All right, let's have the jury, please. And we'll take one 10-minute recess at 11.
We have no objection to introducing to the witness the golf clubs and bag and the Louis Vuitton bag. However, as for the other items, in particular,
Here's the witness. Sorry.
All right, Mr. Park, why don't you step outside, please? Mr. Darden.
thank you, Your Honor. We have no objection to the defense presenting to the witness the golf club bag, the Louis Vuitton bag, or the duffel bag en route from the grand jury. However, the other two bags, the black garment bag and the small brown leather bag with the blue trim, we do have objections to presenting those to the witness. No witness has described either one of those two bags during their testimony. And as the court noted in chambers, the smaller bag appears to be brand new. It has the keys still attached to it as well as the tag.
Mr. Cochran.
Yes, if I might, Your Honor. I think, first of all, with regard to the black garment bag that we take, the bag with the OJS on it, I think we could certainly reasonably understand that if that bag was full with clothes and folded over, it would very closely match the description we've heard of a second black duffel bag. And I think the best way to find out, obviously, is to ask the witness. I mean, this is why this witness is here. We don't want to bring everybody back 4 or 5 times. And I think that the bag is empty, But if it had clothes in it, as you would expect if someone was taking a trip, then I think it becomes very relevant, and the best way is to ask the witness. As regards the other bag and the newness of the bag, as the court knows, Mr. Simpson has not been able to go back out and pick out which bag or whatever. He's been in custody. With regard to that, however, you'll notice even the golf clubs still have the label still on it. That is of no moment. And the golf clubs have obviously been used, and so the fact that it looks new or has some keys on it, I think is not of any moment. The question is, can this witness describe these? Because after all, we were not out there, and we can't put our judgment in this. We have to ask the witness who was there.
All right. At this point, I'm inclined to sustain the prosecution objection until the witness testifies describing these items in particularity, anything that even comes close to these items.
No, not very clear, Your Honor. You're talking about just the 2 items?
That's correct.
All right. I want to make sure I know what you're saying.
All right.
All right.
Well, we have heard a lot this morning about good faith, and I would ask the court to inquire of the defense. Is there contention that that small leather bag, along with the blue trim, is a bag Mr. Simpson carried?
Actually, it's a blue bag with brown leather trim.
Brown.
Thank you.
All right.
I mean, is it their contention that the witness carried that bag on the plane? If not, then they're acting in bad faith. Why introduce it to the witness? This is supposed to be a search for the truth, and we shouldn't be trying to trick witnesses to get them to say something that might affect their credibility.
Nobody's
That seems to be what they're trying to do.
Nobody's trying to trick anybody with all their search warrant powers and all the things they did. They've never even tried to find these bags, just talk about it and throw all these theories up. So let's not talk about trying to trick anybody. We're the ones who, through the court's indulgence and help, have brought these bags in here. So I just want to get on with it, Your Honor, and I understand your ruling that you'll allow some further questioning, and we'll find out. No, I wasn't there. Neither was Mr. Darden, and so clearly the witness is the one who's going to be able to tell us whether or not this comports with his description or his recollection for that night. That's all we're trying to do.
We hope to present more evidence tomorrow relative to what happened to the bag in which the bloody clothes were carried in. And tonight I hope to present to the defense discovery on that issue as soon as it comes into our possession. At any event, we shouldn't be trying to trick witnesses.
All right. I noted the objection. I sustained the objection, and unless I hear a better foundation, I've indicated that I'm sustaining.
And as usual, they're trying to give a soundbite for what might be what he hopes is going to happen. Their whole case is based upon hopes and dreams, and they're evaporating.
Nobody calls us the dream team, Mr. Cochran.
But you dream.
All right, counsel, the repartee is not necessary. All right, let's have the jurors, please. Gentlemen, please be seated. All right, let the record reflect we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies to you for the late starting time. However, we have been engaged this morning, both in chambers and here in open court, on matters that pertain to the testimony that you're hearing today. And I had to resolve those matters before presenting the witness again to you. Mr. Park, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, good morning, Mr. Park.
Good morning, Your Honor.
You're reminded you are still under oath, sir. And Mr. Cochran, you may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you very kindly, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Parr.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Mr. Park, You had described for us, I believe, yesterday, how when you pulled to the Rockingham gate, you looked into the driveway there, and one of the things you were trying to consider was whether or not the limousine could be pulled in through the Rockingham gate. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you have previously testified that, did you see 2 cars in that driveway?
Yes.
And you're sure about that?
I'm pretty sure. Not positive, but it's what I observed.
Your belief is you saw 2 cars there?
Yes.
And can you describe those 2 cars for us?
The one I know was a Rolls Royce. That's
All right.
something that's pretty obvious. The other one I wasn't too sure about. Another dark car.
All right. As you were looking in the Rockingham gate, which of the 2 cars would be closest to you, sir?
From what I remember, the Rolls Royce.
All right. And so would you accept that might be a Bentley as opposed to Rolls Royce? Same family?
Yes.
All right. And it was in darkened color. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, did you have occasion to see some photographs or something at or about the time that you testified at either the grand jury or the preliminary hearing where you saw 2 cars in the driveway at some point?
Not that I remember.
All right. If I were to tell you that second car did not arrive in that driveway until about 1 o'clock p.m. or 1 o'clock a.m., would that in any way refresh your recollection? There's only 1 car there when you looked in there?
No.
Your best recollection as you sit here now is that you saw 2 cars with the Bentley Rolls Royce parked first. Is that correct?
From what I remember, yes.
All right. And the second car then, what kind of car was that?
I don't know what kind of car it was. It just seemed to be another dark car.
All right. Dark in color?
Yes.
And you believe that second dark colored car was parked behind the Bentley?
Yes.
But as I understand your testimony, as you've indicated, you're not sure about that, are you?
No.
All right. That's just, you have a recollection or an impression that you may have seen 2 cars.
Yes.
You are sure, however, that you did see the Bentley or the Rolls Royce?
Yes, I'm
that correct?
positive of that, yes.
That's your positive?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Now, you yesterday described for the jury some luggage that was placed in the back of the limousine. You recall that?
Yes.
And as I understand your testimony, you described for us a golf bag that was encased in some kind of a sheath with some kind of emblem thereon. Is that correct?
Yes.
And if you were to see that golf bag and with the emblem thereon, you'd recognize that, would you not? You think you could?
Yes.
All right. And then you described for us a designer bag that you'd previously called Gucci, but yesterday you and I had a conversation that it might possibly be Louis Vuitton, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you described it as being kind of beige. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. You also previously described what you call a black duffel bag, and you gave us some measurements of about 3 feet by maybe 1.5 feet in width. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And you think you might be able to identify that if you saw it also?
I don't know if I give you a positive identification, but I could say that's what it looks like.
All right. I understand that. No, I understand that night things were dark and it's been a long time. But
Yes.
you can tell us whether or not it looks similar. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
All right. Now, with regard to, you talked about a second black duffel bag, as you described it. With regard to that, do you recall whether or not that was black in color, was it not? The second bag?
It was dark in color.
Yes. And do you recall whether or not you saw any initials or anything on that at all?
No.
Recall? And was it folded over at the time that you saw it in such a way that it appeared that there were clothes inside of it in some way?
Which bag?
The second black duffel bag that you described for us yesterday.
Which, the 2 that were together? Or?
Yeah, the 2 that were on the ground. Did it appear? We were talking about one. Now I'm talking about the other one.
Okay.
And I'm asking you whether or not the other duffel bag, the black duffel bag, appeared to have as though it had some clothes in it.
I don't know what it had in it.
All right, but it did look, and let me ask you this then, did it appear as though it had something inside?
Yes.
All right. And one of those bags was open, partially or unzipped, and you didn't look inside though.
No, I didn't.
But based upon your experience and common sense, you felt that it had something in it at that point. Is that correct?
Yes.
So it looked fairly full, did it?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And then you described for us yesterday this other bag that was approximately 20 feet away from you. on the driveway. You remember that?
Yes.
Can you again describe that by color for us, if you would?
Again, another dark bag. I never really handled that bag or got close to it, so
All right. And again, from a standpoint of size, can you help us with the size of that bag, sir?
it was a bit smaller than the other ones. It seemed to be 1.5 across and half to a foot deep, you know.
All right. Do you recall whether or not it had any handles on?
No.
All right. And you never got closer than 20 feet with regard to that bag. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. You and I'd like at this point to show the witness a couple of bags, and at some point I'd like to approach station.
All right, the two that there are no objection to, you may. All right, with court reporter, please. Questions, Howard?
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Park, just a couple other questions with regard to the two duffel bags that were on the ground when you pulled in with the limousine. They were out in front of Mr. Simpson's house. You recall that?
Yes.
Can you describe for us and give us a word picture of the duffel bags? You told us they were black in color. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as between the two bags, was there any difference between the two bags?
From what I remember, they were pretty much the same.
All right. And with regard to, I have to ask you whether there was any writing on either one of them. And do you recall any writing at all?
No.
And did they both appear as though they had something inside of them?
Yes.
Can you describe for us anything about the handles of these two bags?
No.
All right. And did you put the two duffel bags inside the car?
Yes.
And you only had them for a very short time, I presume. Is that correct?
Yeah, seconds.
And that wasn't something you were concentrating on, I presume?
No.
All right. But with regard to, what else can you tell us about these bags that you haven't told us thus far? You told us the color. You told us there's no writing that you recall.
I'm not positive if one had a shoulder strap or not.
Is it possible that one could have been carried up over one's shoulder? Is that correct?
Yes.
And as with sometimes, as sometimes happens with those bags with the shoulder straps, they can also sometimes be folded. Is that correct?
Yes, I guess.
And do you recall on that particular night whether or not, as it appears, the duffel bag, it had been folded over with clothes inside of it? Do you recall?
No.
You don't recall?
No.
All right. If you were to see both of these black duffel bags again, do you think you could tell us whether or not it appears to be similar to the bags you saw that night?
Yes.
Your best test would be to actually look at it, right?
Yes.
All right. Can you tell us anything else that you haven't told us thus far about the two black duffel bags?
And that's about all I remember. Other than one was unzipped.
And of the two of them, one was unzipped?
Yes.
And where were the zippers on that particular bag, if you recall?
Seemed to be in the middle.
All right. The other one, did the other duffel bag have zippers also?
It was closed. I don't know if it had a zipper or not. I didn't examine them to.
All right. This was just a quick thing because you were late for that
Yes.
interview, right? I understand. Then may I show the witness a couple of bags quickly?
The first two, yes.
They're not three.
I'm sorry?
They're not three.
The first two,
Maybe put you at the work.
yes. Mr. Cochran.
For the record, I want to ask one question before I show the witness bags. Mr. Park, do you know the difference between a garment bag, as it were, and a duffel bag? Do you make a distinction between the two of those?
Yes.
And if a garment bag is folded over with clothes therein, would you agree that looks very similar to a duffel bag on occasion?
It could.
All right. Do you know the second black bag that you saw that night? Do you know whether or not that was possibly a garment bag that was folded over with clothes therein?
Not positive, no.
You don't know?
No.
And again, would the best test of that be for you to actually see a bag and then make a determination?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, I'd like to mark as defendants next in order 1062, what apparently is a garment bag. Counsel has seen it, a Louis Vuitton garment bag. I'd like, if I might, to approach Mr. Park.
Yes, fold over the luggage bag,
Louis Vuitton bag.
garment bag.
Mr. Park, I want to place the defendant's 1062 before you. Why don't you just take a minute and take a look at that and see whether or not the bag that we talked about yesterday being a designer bag appears similar to defendant 1062 from the night of June 12th, 1994, sir.
It's very similar, if not the bag.
All right? And do you want to look at it anymore?
No.
Looks very similar?
Yes.
All right. And you see these little LVs there on it?
Yes.
That looks like what you saw that night, is that correct?
Yes.
You see the anything else about this bag that looks familiar? The label. Did you happen to see whether or not the Sky Caps put a label on it that night where this bag was going?
No, I didn't.
Do you recall whether or not the designer bag you saw that night had a Hertz label with the name Simpson on the other side? Do you recall that?
No.
You don't recall seeing that?
No.
Do you recall seeing premium service, flagship service, American Airlines?
No.
All right. But you went out on American Airlines.
Yes.
So your testimony is this bag, defendant's 1062 for identification, may well be the bag that you had that night. Is that correct? I saw that night.
Yes, it looks very familiar.
Okay, sir. And like now, Your Honor, to show what I guess will be marked the defendant's 1063, being brought by Mr. Douglas. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. You have previously described for us what you believe was a golf bag, and you told us that it had some kind of an insignia on it. Is that correct?
Yes.
We're now placing before you now defendant's 1063 for identification. Do you recognize this bag at all?
No.
Do you see an insignia on this bag that looks familiar to you at all?
No.
Does the configuration of this particular bag seem similar to the golf bag that you saw on that particular night?
Somewhat similar, but I don't think it's the same.
Doesn't look the same to you?
No.
If you were to, would it be helpful for you? Did you see the clubs at all that night?
Yes. Not the clubs itself, but the bag.
You saw a sheath of some kind?
Yes.
All right. And how does this sheath look different than the one you saw?
Yeah, it didn't say Swiss Army like that. It wasn't that big.
The Swiss Army thing?
Yes. And it seemed to be a little bit different. It wasn't as bulky.
Didn't seem that bulky?
No.
All right. If we can unzip it. Did you ever have it unzipped that night at all? Have you look at the bag, clubs inside? Did you, at any time that night, see what apparently is a set of golf clubs in a some kind of black golf bag with a top there on, a sleeve or something on there on, and it has another insignia, Swiss Army
Brands.
Brands Limited? Does that-
I never saw it like that. No. It had another sheath, but I don't recall seeing it written like that. It seemed to be a different emblem.
All right, seemed to be a different emblem as you recall.
Yes.
Did you, this particular bag, I think you described for us, the golf bag, was placed in the vehicle by Mr. Cato Kalin,
That's correct.
so you didn't handle it per se, is that correct?
No, I was there when he put it in. I handled it at the airport.
All right, when you took it out, put it on the cart of the gentleman who was checked, was it not?
Yes.
Okay. So your best recollection is that this set of golf gloves does not appear similar to the ones you saw that night? Or can you say one way or the other?
Well, it could be the golf bags. I mean, the golf clubs. But there was a different, it just seemed to be a different sheath than this one over it.
Was the sheath you saw that night, was it dark also?
Yes.
All right. The difference between this sheath and the sheath that you recall that night has to do with the emblem, is that correct?
Yes.
The emblem that you recall that night said Swiss Army also?
It didn't say it like that. It wasn't written as big. It seemed to be just a little silkscreen white triangle emblem, like almost like the center of this. Just the red part.
All right, you can return the microphone so I can stick what you're saying. You're saying that the Swiss, first of all, let me ask you this. Did the bag you saw that night have a sheath that had Swiss Army on it?
I'm not positive. I'm pretty sure it said Swiss Army. It was more of a emblem. Like I said, it wasn't written that big.
But I guess the point is, did it have a Swiss Army?
Yes.
There. Okay, I think you testified that yesterday, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay. What you're telling us is that your recollection is that the insignia Swiss Army appears different than the sheath that is on this, on defendant's 1063. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. And how long would you say, Mr. Douglas, would you say you looked at that particular bag, or that golf bag with the insignia of that particular bag? How long, how much time did you spend looking at it?
Not very long at all. I noticed it.
The matter of seconds, would you say?
Yes.
And the other bag?
Counsel, I would just suggest for a moment that you just prop the bag up on the rail there for the jurors down at the end here so they can see the emblem that we've been talking about. All right. Thank you, counsel.
Give you a second, the red bag.
Yes.
Now, had you ever before that night ever seen a Swiss Army insignia on a bag before that night?
On a bag?
Yes, any kind of a bag. And luggage.
No.
Do you know whether or not they have more than one kind of insignia on bags, Swiss Army Company?
Yes.
What's the answer to that? You know the answer? What is the answer to that? Do they have more than one kind of insignia on luggage?
I said yes.
Okay. You know that they do have? You've seen more than one kind?
Yes.
Okay, and when did you make this observation?
Just now.
All right, and by the fact that the one you saw here you felt was different from what you've seen in the past?
Yes.
Is that how you made that determination?
Yes.
All right. Now, Do you recall that when you testified at the preliminary hearing, you had indicated that when you first arrived at the location, you missed or passed by the residence there on Rockingham. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And in fact, you'd indicated that you came up Rockingham going north, and you were going a little bit fast. You remember testifying to that?
Yes.
And so you actually missed the house, right? At that point?
Well, I didn't miss the house. I caught the address on the side of the curb, so I knew it was the house. But I'd say I missed that gate.
All right, and well, now, let me just ask you this. What way were you going when you came up, when you were going a little bit fast, when you first got there?
I was heading north.
And what did you do after that as you were heading north?
And that's when I turned down, made a right onto Ashford, heading east.
And did you go halfway down Ashford at that point?
Yes.
And you came back and then you parked at that point?
Yes.
And that's when you parked across from the Ashford gate, is that correct?
Yes.
But now, what I want to ask you, when you were going by a little bit fast, when you spotted the address on the sidewalk, is that right?
Yes.
And so you were driving and looking at the letters on the sidewalk as you went past, and you went on up to Ashford, is that right?
Yes.
And as you told us earlier, at that point, you were focusing on the address and on the house at that point, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And in addition to that, as you told us yesterday, you were not focusing on any cars, particular cars parked there, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And you cannot tell this jury positively that a vehicle was parked there outside the Rockingham gate or not, can you?
No.
In fact, when you left to get to the airport and you looked to your left,
Actually, all of the state's testimony, we witnessed it, he's about
discuss it, Mr. Jerry.
Overruled.
When you, in fact, when you left the Rockingham gate, sir, and you were going to pull out to head to the airport to go back toward Sunset, at that point, you don't recall whether or not you saw any parked cars, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And that's what you indicated to Officers Tippin on June 15th in the conversations you had, right?
Correct.
That's what you indicated at the grand jury, is that correct?
Yes.
That's what you indicated at the preliminary hearing when you testified, is that correct?
Yes.
And at all times, throughout your testimony, you've always tried to be accurate and as accurate as you could, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you agreed with me that your testimony for events that transpired on June 12th in the late evening hours was obviously better back in June than it is now, some 8 or 9 months later in March of 1995. Is that correct?
I'd say it's the same.
I know you're very young, but is your memory, by that it's a compliment, by the way, but your memory, even at your age, tends to get a little worse over a period of time, doesn't it?
I'd agree on that.
All right, that's what I'm saying. So when events are fresher in your mind, they're likely to be more accurate. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
All right. Then when time passes a little bit, isn't that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, yesterday, I asked you some questions about the fact that June 12th was a Sunday evening and the street in and around Rockingham and Ashford were quiet that night. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And would you characterize that as kind of a quiet neighborhood?
Yes.
And as such, you told us, in fact, that you observed and saw cars that were coming and passing by you. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you never at any time saw any car come up, stop, or hear anybody get out or slam any doors. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
You never went over to inspect any cars that particular night, any parked cars, did you?
No.
And that was, again, because your job was to pick up this client and get him to the airport on time. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And nothing else was important to you at that point. Is that correct? Except getting the client there safely?
That's about it.
And you did that. You got in there safely and relatively on time. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
I asked you some questions yesterday about this partition inside the limousine. Can you describe for us how that works in a limousine from the could separate the driver's compartment from where your client or the customer is? How does that
Yeah.
work?
There's a button in the back that the client or whoever you have in the car can put up the divider. There's a glass one that you can see through, and then there's another fully dark one, like a wood border, that goes up in between if you want total privacy.
All right. Did any time did Mr. Simpson ever put this total privacy partition up that night?
No.
At any time did he even put the clear one up that night?
No.
In other words, he left it down at all times. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when it's down, you're able to communicate and just talk back and forth. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And in fact, in most limousines, was it true at yours that if you had put the one of total privacy up, there's usually a phone in the back where you can talk back and forth if you wanted to. Isn't that right?
Yes.
All right. But in your conversations that you've described for us with Mr. Simpson, the two of you were just able to talk back and forth. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, yesterday, you described for us this figure of this person that you saw, you recall, and you told us that, as I understand it, when you first observed this figure, this person was just about in the entranceway of the Rockingham residence, right?
Yes.
And you could not tell us from whence, like that. You could not tell us from where that individual had come. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
And you saw this individual for just a fleeting period of time, just a second or two. Is that right?
Yes.
And your observation at that time was from outside the gate, on the Ashford gate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you ever, when you first saw this figure of this person who was going toward the front door of Rockingham, sir, did you ever see or overhear any conversation between this person that you said was wearing something dark, perhaps even a robe, with the gentleman who you described as Cato Kalin later? Did you see them at all talking at all when you saw this figure of this individual?
No.
When Cato Kalin then let you inside and you pulled inside, you told us about your observations. You then had a conversation with him. Is that correct?
Correct.
With Cato Kalin?
Yes.
And then, as we understand, it was within no more than 6 minutes that you then saw Mr. OJ Simpson come down, and you then saw him for the first time.
That's correct.
And so that we're clear for the jury, the bag that he was carrying when he came down, when you first saw him within 5 or 6 minutes after you got there, is that the bag that looks similar to the Louis Vuitton bag that we just showed the jury?
Yes.
And he was carrying that bag in his hand?
Yes.
And was it folded over?
Yes.
In the fashion appeared here?
Yes.
The two duffel bags were already outside?
Yes.
Now, when you were in and around that driveway, I may have asked you this yesterday, you never saw any blood drops anywhere on that driveway, did you?
No, I didn't.
Never saw any blood drops in the foyer area of the residence that I showed you a picture of yesterday, did you? Oh, well, did you?
No, I didn't.
Since June 12th, 1994, have you had occasion to go back out to Rockingham at all, that location?
No.
You've never been out there with the police or anything?
No.
You described for Ms. Clark yesterday that you wore glasses because you had trouble seeing things far away. You're nearsighted, right?
Correct.
And how do you determine when you wear your glasses? You're going to wear your glasses?
Pretty much just when I feel like it. I don't wear them very often at all.
So it's just if you
I think they make my eyes worse.
Yeah, really?
Yes.
So, all right. At any rate, you didn't have him on that night, did you?
No.
Now, with regard to Mr. Dale St. John, did you talk to him at all anymore that night after you dropped Mr. Simpson off?
No, I didn't.
When did you next talk to him, if you did, in connection with taking Mr. Simpson to the airport?
I think it was the next morning.
And did you keep the limousine with you that particular night? If you
It was at his house, which is across the street.
You took it back to his house
Yes.
and then just walked home, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you have you not seen pictures of the Rockingham residents during the times you've met with Ms. Clark and the others at the DA's office, isn't that correct?
Yes.
In fact, when you met with her last Friday in this building, like 11 o'clock on, at that time you went over some photographs or pictures at that point, did you not?
A few, yes.
All right, and some of those few pictures were of the Rockingham residents, were they?
Yes.
When you were parked before you went to either the Rockingham gate or the Ashford gate, when you were parked, I guess on Ashford, you were parked in a way you could look down Rockingham, were you?
Not actually down Rockingham. I was just looking at it.
Or you could look at Rockingham, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Is that why you're in the car? Is that why you were still seated in the car?
Yes.
And when you got outside the car and kind of walked around and walked to the rear of the car, could you see down toward Rockingham at that point?
No, I was sitting on the curb looking, which would have been down the Ashford gate
All right, so you'd be
of the
looking
residence.
the Ashford gate toward the residence of that.
Yes.
Right. The vehicle was pointed forward, and you got out and were looking. What direction is that?
That would be south.
Looking south at that point.
The
is that
car was pointing west.
west at that point. All right. And I understand that the other item may be here.
Yes, Ms. Clark, want to take a look at this report?
When you were up in the DA's office meeting with Ms. Clark last Friday, do you remember what pictures she showed you of Rockingham?
I don't recall.
Were they some of the same photographs that we saw yesterday during your
Yes.
direct examination? So they look familiar. Did you see any of the boards here at that time also?
The phone records.
Saw the phone records?
Yes.
And you saw some pictures that look similar to the pictures that you see here?
Yes.
Saw here. Is that right? Okay. I'm going to approach you first and show you a black bag. Council has seen it. I'm going to ask you whether or not this black bag, and I'll place it before you. Strike that. Just place the black bag before you. Can you take a look at that, please, sir?
This one looks familiar.
Now, you've had occasion to look at that black bag.
Yes.
Does that black bag look similar to either one of the black duffel bags that you've described for the jury to this point?
Yes, it does.
And does it look dissimilar at all?
It looks very similar.
All right, looks very similar.
Yes.
So this could have well been one of the black duffel bags that were out in front of the Simpson home, in front of the entranceway. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Man, move it closer to the jury room.
Yes.
Now I want to show you another bag. Off the scene.
All right, we'll mark this defense 1065.
1065.
Yes.
1065 for you. Ask you to take a look through all of 1065. Now, with regard to Defendant's 1065, it's obviously empty, doesn't have anything inside of it. It does have, first of all, a handle apparently on it. Does this look similar to any of the, either one of the black bags you saw there that particular night?
No, not that I remember.
You don't recall seeing a bag that looks similar to this that night?
No.
Is that correct?
Yes.
With regard, Your Honor, I'd like to place on the Elmo, if I could, Defendant 66E. I can't.
Defendant or prosecution?
Prosecution 66E. Thank you. Now, can you see 66E there?
Yes.
And I just wanted to have you take a look at that again. And can you help us and show us, I don't want to particularly write on this particular diagram, but perhaps a word picture will be helpful, where the vehicle you described as the Rolls Royce or the Bentley is parked in that driveway by using the various descriptions that depicted on 66E.
It would have been just about in that little inlet area, right above the word driveway on the Rockingham driveway.
Right above the word driveway, and you're getting some help with it?
Yeah, a little bit farther towards the street.
All right, so the Bentley would be there?
Yes.
And Ms. Clark has no objection if we were, Your Honor, to mark that area for the Bentley? Should we put, put a box there, I guess. We'll make a box. Put R. And pointed toward the Rockingham gate, right?
Yes.
And that, so that mark there on 66E is the, why don't you put an RR about it?
How about B?
Well, B.
Everybody's calling it a little.
Well, it's a B. They're similar, Your Honor. We'll make it a B.
Who made it be is the
Well, it's in white.
So that is that a fair approximation of where you believe you saw the Bentley that particular night, sir?
Yes.
Now, this other car that you said, the other dark car, do you recall where that car would be in relationship to the Bentley?
Oh, right behind it.
All right, and so we may either make a very small car or run into that other B, but right behind it, Mr. Harris, can you do that? Right in that area there?
Yes.
All right, and that's the one you're not positive about, right?
Correct.
It was dark. Well, I think maybe we'll
You know,
understand.
Mr. Craig, I really don't think it's necessary to mark it. The jury
All right, that's
has been
fine.
there. They've seen it.
All right.
They know what we're talking about.
Fine, no problem, Your Honor. So we know the area. Thank you, Your Honor. May I have just one more, Your Honor?
Perhaps this will be a good moment. I need to give my court reporter a brief recess. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a 10-minute comfort recess for the court reporter. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions. Don't conduct any deliberations. Don't let anybody communicate with you. And I'm going to ask you to step back into the jury room. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. All right, Mr. Park, you can step down. Come back in 10 minutes. Let the record reflect we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good morning again, Mr. Park. You're reminded you're still under oath. Mr. Cochran, you may continue.
Park, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Park, you described for us briefly yesterday the stretch limo. How long is that stretch limo, sir, if you recall?
I don't know the exact length. It's I'd say approximately 28 feet.
And it does require some maneuvering when you're turning it, does it not?
Yes.
I want you to take a look at a photograph, and I want to ask you a couple of questions regarding the photograph. You see, I think it's People's 136. Thank you. Can you see People's 136 for identification there?
Yes.
By the way, have you ever seen that particular photograph before?
Yes, I have.
And could you have seen that photograph in Ms. Clark's office
Yes.
last Friday?
Possibly, yes.
And we've already covered the fact that you're clear about the Bentley, but not so clear about the car behind, right?
Correct.
And does that photograph comport with your present recollection of how the cars were configured that night when you were looking into the Rockingham Gate?
Yes.
Now, with regard to the stretch limo, as I understand it, in order for you to come out the Rockingham Gate, you'd have to come right down the driver's side of those two cars depicted in People's 136 for identification, is that right?
Yes.
And do you know, as you look at that photograph and recalling that particular driveway, whether it would have been possible to maneuver that stretched limousine around two cars as they're parked and configured there?
I wouldn't know that.
You don't know that, do you?
No.
You'd agree it'd be a lot easier if that second car wasn't there to get out of that driveway. Isn't that correct? Well,
Or can you tell from that picture?
No.
all right, well, let me ask you this way. With regard to the way the cars appear there, you can't tell whether it's possible to maneuver the stretch limousine around them. Isn't that correct?
From that picture, no.
Right. However, you'd agree, would you not, that if there were only one vehicle there, it would tend to be easier to get around than where you have two vehicles parked in tandem. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
All right. And as we sit here now, does that photograph, People's 136, in any way refresh your recollection of whether or not there were one or two cars there on June 12th in the late evening hours?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Now, sir, with regard to the stretch limousine, you spoke with Officers Tippin and Carr on or about June 15th, 1994. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you spoke to them in person and also by phone. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when you spoke to them in person, was it at the Harbor Division of the LAPD?
Yes, it was.
All right. And after they talked to you, were you aware of whether or not they went and looked inside the rear of this the stretch limousine?
Yes, I told him that might be a good idea. It hadn't been used since that night.
All right. So they went. These two officers, Tippin and Carr, looked inside the vehicle.
Yes.
All right. Were you with them at that point?
No.
All right. You told them to do that, right?
Yes.
And lastly, did you have any, as you think back on that night, when you came out the Rockingham gate to then go up to Sunset and go to the airport, did you have any trouble in getting out of that driveway and negotiating the turn from in front of the house to go out the driveway, if you recall?
No, I didn't have any trouble. I didn't hit anything.
Well, that's the ultimate
Yeah,
test,
I
isn't
didn't-
it? That's the all right. But I want you to think back for me. Do you recall any problems in negotiating or maneuvering?
No.
You didn't hit anything.
No.
Good. I have nothing further. This witness at this point, sure.
Ms. Clark?
Good morning, Mr. Park.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let me first ask you, when you were at the defendant's home on the night of June the 12th, were you in a hurry?
It depends on what point in time.
Well, when you finally saw, let me ask you, that's good, thank you. By the time the defendant came downstairs to the limousine, were you in a hurry?
Yes.
And did he appear to be in a hurry?
Yes.
Were you spending time trying to study the defendant, his hands and his body when he came downstairs?
No.
This is just what the proceeding suggested, Your Honor.
Or Fred's question?
How carefully were you trying to observe the defendant's body and hands when he came downstairs finally to the limousine?
Not at all.
Did you pay any attention to his hands at all?
No.
Shake his hands or have any physical contact with him, with his body or his person?
Shook his hand, yes.
And which hand did you shake?
Right hand?
You ever touch the left hand?
No.
You told us, think that he was carrying a black overcoat.
Yes.
Do you recall whether he had that overcoat draped over his left arm?
What I said, I don't remember if he had it on or if he was carrying it.
And if he was carrying it, do you recall which arm, whether it would have been the right or the left arm that he had it over?
No.
Sustain.
When you were at the, okay, you indicated, I think earlier, that you were on Ashford twice in two different positions that night, correct?
Yes.
When you were parked on Ashford I'm showing you people 63, sir. I believe you indicated that the first time you parked on Ashford, you said you parked in that location where you see that black Jeep in the photograph,
That's correct.
and that you sat behind the limo on the curb.
Correct.
Were you able to see the Rockingham gate from your position behind the limousine on the curb?
No, I wasn't.
Were you able to, and then later on, I think you indicated that you parked facing in towards the Ashford gate. You recall that?
Yes.
Were you able to see the Rockingham gate from your position facing the Ashford gate?
No, I wasn't.
And you recall, people 64, that's the Ashford gate. You recall that?
Yes.
And while you were seated in that limousine, after you'd pointed it in towards the Ashford gate, did you have the radio on at any point?
I think it was on, but I don't know how loud it was. It was down very low.
Okay. What was your attention directed towards when you were seated there in the limousine facing into the Ashford gate?
Repeat that?
What was the focus of your attention at that time?
My focus? I was more or less just looking at the house, seeing if there was any lights on, stuff like that. I mean, when I rang the buzzer, nobody was there, so.
Were you paying attention to the traffic in the street, either on Ashford or on Rockingham?
No,
Was that important to you?
no,
Was it important to you at that time to determine which cars may have stopped or not,
no,
or which may have parked on Rockingham or not?
no.
Do you even know if you could have heard a car pull up on Rockingham from your position at the Ashford gate?
No,
Would it have been significant to you if you had?
no.
Now, when you first pulled up, when you first pulled up Rockingham at about 10:22, you indicated earlier you were looking for addresses on the curb so you could find the defendant's house. Is that right? You recall that?
I'm objecting this narrative question, Your Honor. It's not a question, it's a statement.
Oral.
Yes, I was.
Okay. Are you sure that you were doing that, sir?
Looking for the address?
Yes.
Positive.
No doubt in your mind about that?
No,
Asking him.
Oral.
no doubt.
And when you indicated to us that you saw the address of 360 on the curb of Rockingham, are you sure about that?
Just asking
Oral.
Yes.
Do you have any doubt about that?
No.
him.
Oral.
And when you were looking at the curb and you saw that address, you indicated earlier that you did not see a white Ford Bronco. You recall saying that?
Object, legal suggestion, Your Honor. It's one of these questions.
I assume this is foundational to something
Yes.
else.
Yes, it is.
Oral.
Legal statement.
Oral.
No.
And are you sure about that?
Check. Yes.
Oral. You can answer the question.
I wasn't looking for it. I didn't see it.
Are you sure you didn't see it?
Yeah, just one. That's the answer.
Oral. You can answer the question.
I wouldn't say I'm positive. I wasn't looking for a car. I was looking for an address.
Okay. When you looked at the address on the curb, people 62A. You recall driving by that location, sir?
Yes.
And the address indicated on the curb, is that where you saw it that night, about 10:22?
Yes.
And when you were looking in that location, did you see a white Ford Bronco?
Check upon that question. Ask me answer properly.
Overruled.
No, I didn't.
And when you pulled back down to the Rockingham gate at 10:39, you recall your testimony at that point, you pulled so that the side, the driver's side window was parallel with the driveway. You recall testifying to that, sir?
Yes.
How close did you pull to the driveway at that point at 10:39?
10 feet.
Within 10 feet of the driveway?
I was in the middle of the street, yes.
So you were not over on the right-hand side where your lane of traffic would ordinarily be, you were farther over to the left?
Check upon seating.
Ask him to describe where he was.
In terms of the lanes of traffic, if you're driving southbound on Rockingham, your lane of traffic would be to what side of the street, sir?
It'd be on the right.
And were you all the way over on the right?
No.
Where were you?
Towards the middle of the street.
Did you have to veer around any white Ford Bronco parked at the curb?
Follow that question.
Sustained. First question.
Did you see,
I've sustained the objection.
Yes.
All right.
when you pulled up to the Rockingham driveway, sir, and you looked into the gate, when you pulled out to that location, was the location in which you see the white Ford Bronco on this photograph, was that area in your field of view?
Yes, it would have been.
And did you see the white Ford Bronco?
No, I didn't.
Overruled.
And did you tell that to the police when you spoke to them shortly after the murders occurred?
Yes.
And did you tell that to the grand jury in your testimony as well?
Yes.
Object, Your
And
Honor.
did you-
Mr. States,
Overruled.
When you testified before the grand jury, did you tell them that when you pulled down to the Rockingham gate to see if you could pull into that driveway, that you did not see the white Ford Bronco parked at the curb?
object on that question. That's evidence for what it said. That's great.
Fine.
Sustained.
Directing counsel's attention to page 252 of grand jury transcript. Line 12, well, line 10. Start with line 10. Ready?
Yes, I asked you to read all the way down to,
I'm
how far you gonna read?
going to read all the way down. I'll read over to page 253.
All right, proceed.
Question, do you recall the following questions and answers before the grand jury back in June 1994, sir? Question by myself. At what point did you get back in your car, if you did? Answer, I got back in at about 10:30 and sat there and waited until about 10:40, and then I pulled up to the front gate on Ashford. Question, Did you get back in your car and drive around at any point? Answer. Before I pulled into the gate on Ashford, I came out onto Rockingham. Question. How far down Rockingham did you come? Answer. I came all the way down to the gate of Rockingham. Question. Did you notice any car parked in front? Answer. No, I did not. Question. There wasn't any car there? Answer. No. Question. You were looking there and you would have seen it? Answer. Yeah, I would have saw it if it was there. Question. What time was that? Answer. That was just before 10:40. Question. About 10:35 or so? Yeah. I then noticed that it would be a lot easier if I just backed up and came back to the other driveway because it didn't look like I would be able to make the turn in the limousine. So I drove back to the other gate. Question. When you say the other gate, you mean the Ashford gate? Answer. Yes. Question. Where did you park that time? Answer. I parked face first into the driveway looking towards the front of the house. You parked right up in the driveway area just in front of the gate? Answer. Yes, I did. Question. And you were facing in? Answer. Yes. Question. What time was it then? Answer. 10:40. Do you recall giving those answers to the questions that I've just read to you, sir?
Yes, I do.
And directing counsel's attention to the preliminary hearing transcript, pages 15 and 16. I'll start with 12. Well, actually, no. Let me back up, counsel. I'm going to start at, I should start on page 14. I start at line 2. Page 14, okay?
14,
I'm sorry.
line 2.
Page 14, line 2.
Proceed.
Ready? Okay. I'm going to ask you if the questions I'm about to read to you and the answers are those you recall being posed to you and given by you at the preliminary hearing in, I believe it was July of 1994. Okay. Question. So was it about 10:39 when you pulled down to the Rockingham gate? Answer. Yes, I would say that. Question. When you pulled down to the Rockingham gate, you say you looked down the driveway? Answer. Yes. Question. Would that mean, sir, that your driver's side window was parallel to the driveway? Answer. Yes, it was. Question. And so you were right next to this area here that I'm indicating with my pen, which is just above the line that seems to indicate the edge of the driveway uppermost on the Rockingham gate. Rockingham side, thank you. Answer, yes. Now, why were you looking up that driveway? For what purpose? Answer, to drive into it. Question, and why did it seem inaccessible to you? Answer, it just seemed too narrow. The two walls here and just the way the cars were and the way the driveway bent this way, it didn't look as easy as the other side, as coming in straight ahead and then making the turn. Question, so it looked a little bit too tight to get up to the front door from that gate? Answer, yes. So you were looking carefully through that window to assess whether or not you could make the turn? Answer, yeah. Question, did you notice any white Ford Bronco parked on the Rockingham side near the gate? Answer, no, I didn't. Question, would you have seen it had it been parked there next to the gate? Given the manner in which you were looking at that location.
I think that was an objection. We should-
Yeah, okay, strike that question.
Okay, last question.
Strike that. Given the manner, but this one was okay. Given the manner in which you were looking at that location when you pulled up to the Rockingham gate, would that white Ford Bronco have been right in your field of view? Answer, I wouldn't say I was. It was right in my exact sight. If, question, was it in your field of view where you were looking? No. Towards, question, towards the driveway? Was that area, let me indicate with my pen, were you able to see this area as you were looking up the driveway? Answer, yes, I was. And for the record, I indicated the area just above the line, which would have been just to the north of the Rockingham gate. Okay, were you able to see this area? Answer, yes, I was. And as you were looking down the driveway, you could see this area that I'm indicating with your pen, with your pen. Answer, yes. Question, and you did not see the white Ford Bronco? Answer, no, I didn't. Now, that was 10:40 approximately, or 10:39, you said? Answer, yes. Question, and then what did you do? After you pulled up to the Rockingham gate you indicated? Answer, I backed straight back up and made another left onto Ashford and came up to this gate, the Ashford gate. And then, I'm going to finish it. Question, where did you park when you came back to the Ashford side? I pulled in frontwards in the limousine, and, you know, the front bumper was just about touching the gate. Question, so at that point, was the front of your limo pointing into the driveway? Answer, yes, it was. Question, and what time was it at that point when you pulled up to the gate facing into the driveway on the Ashford side? Answer, about 10:40. Do you recall those questions and those answers having been given to you to those questions at the preliminary hearing in this matter in 1994?
Yes, I do.
So when you pulled Now, when you pulled out of the Rockingham gate on your way to the airport, I believe you indicated you recall some obstruction to the right
Object.
as you were.
Leading is object. This foundation.
How can it be leading if he's already testified to it,
Yes.
Mr. Park? Do you recall what that obstruction was?
No, I don't.
So at this time, do you even know whether it was a car parked or anything else to the right of you?
No, I don't.
All right, now you indicated, sir, that you saw the 6-foot, 200-pound African-American person in all dark clothing walk into the entrance of Rockingham. You recall that?
Yes.
And you said that was between 10:54 and 10:55?
I have a question pending with no answer.
I'm waiting for a photograph I wanted to show him. Great. Okay, can you indicate on these photographs, sir? I'm going to ask you to. I'm going to ask you to direct the. I'm sorry?
For what purpose? All right, without the reporter. No, but you don't have to stand there either. Both of you. Proceed. This is People's 139. Right. Okay.
People's 139. Could you please indicate, if you would, sir, direct that arrow to the location, if you can find it on this photograph, where you first saw the person you described walking into the house between 10:54 and 10:55?
It would have been up just to the corner of those potted plants. Up a little farther. There you go. Right, go back. Around there.
Was it
Maybe-
on? It wasn't
maybe-
on them.
Well, in that area. Maybe a little bit closer to the door. There you go.
There?
There, yeah.
Close to the door.
That it was just moved closer to the door and off the pot.
Is that?
That's the general area, yes.
Mark it? Had this marked as what, People's 139A?
We have to, that's where he placed it.
That's what he said.
Ask him again. Just a
All right.
You
Where that
could,
white arrow is that correct, sir?
you could go closer to the front of the door.
Okay, okay, let's move it.
That would be good.
All right. People's 139B.
All right, 139B.
Thank you. When you saw that person walk into the door, sir, were you able to, did you see the hem of a robe swirling around the legs at all?
I'll check you on it. Sorry, that is.
Oh, oh,
Some fact not have this.
oh.
No.
Okay. Did you see that person swinging a golf club
No.
or carrying a golf club?
No.
Now, you indicated that after that person entered the house, you saw the lights go on.
Correct.
That's it.
When you,
Oh,
ultimately, at some point, you pulled up to the, you pulled inside,
Yes.
correct? Before you pulled inside, sir, you indicated you spoke to the defendant over the intercom.
Yes.
Did he buzz you in?
That's it.
oh.
No.
It was Cato that let you in?
From what I remember, yes.
Okay. After you got in and you parked, you said at some point you saw the defendant come downstairs, come out the front door.
Yes.
Did you look at your watch to see what time it was when he came downstairs?
No, I didn't.
You estimated for us that it was 5 to 6 minutes between the time you spoke to the defendant, or excuse me, strike that. You indicated to us yesterday that it was 5 to 6 minutes, I believe, between the time you saw the 6-foot, 200-pound person go into the house and the time you saw the defendant come outside. You
Yes.
recall that?
Yes, I do.
You did not look at your watch when the defendant came outside. Is that 5 to 6 minute time frame an
Sustained.
estimate?
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Is that 5 to 6 minute time frame you gave us between the time you saw the 6-foot, 200-pound person go inside and you saw the defendant come outside? Is that approximate or is that exact?
That's estimated time. That's a guesstimate, you could say.
A guesstimate?
Yeah.
Hey, could I get 138? Examination. You recognize this foyer area of the defendant's residence?
Yes, I do.
You indicated also that you saw the defendant and Cato speaking together just inside the house shortly before you left for the airport. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you see the area in this photograph where they stood talking for a bit
Yeah, that's the area.
in that foyer?
Yes.
Now, when you were 38. You recall the front play and lawn area in the inside the inside the gates of the defendant's residence?
I didn't know what it was at the time, no. I mean,
All right. You see the area on this diagram that has previously been marked as People 66, but now it's on the screen. There's designated lawn
yes.
and play yard.
Yes.
Can you tell us what the lighting was like in that area that night?
This is an accident answer on the direct examination.
Overruled.
It was very dark.
And can you tell us, sir, whether you saw any golf balls in that lawn area that night?
No.
Let me ask you also, sir, were you looking down at the driveway and on the ground to see if there were any spots on the ground that night?
No.
And can you tell us what the lighting in the driveway was like in general?
It was dim. There wasn't very much light.
That's People's 138. Okay, you indicated previously that you saw a small dark bag, some behind the Bentley or the Rolls Royce, or behind the cars, I'm sorry. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
Can you see the area on this photograph, People's 138, where you saw that bag?
Now, this is an accident answer that we haven't considered marks.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
It's just to the lower left corner of that picture.
Why don't you direct the arrow?
Straight, go back. Towards, just down towards the corner. Somewhere around there.
Okay. 138. C? 138C, Your Honor.
All right, 38C.
All right, now that bag, sir, you indicated, I believe yesterday, that golf clubs were placed into the trunk, the garment bag was placed into the trunk, and then there were 2 black duffel bags that went into the passenger compartment.
Let's face the evidence.
Overruled.
Yes.
Did the defendant load any of those bags into the trunk or the passenger compartment?
Overruled.
Not from what I remember.
But that knapsack, that small bag that you just indicated on this photograph, did you load that into the car?
No, I didn't.
after the defendant picked it up? Did you ever picked it up from that location? Did you ever see it again?
No.
Now, you indicated that one of the duffel bags was unzipped.
Yes.
Could you tell whether that duffel bag was empty or full?
It wasn't empty and it wasn't full.
Did you look inside it to see what was in it?
No.
And that small dark bag that the defendant picked up from the location shown in this photograph, have you seen that bag in court today?
Which one?
The small dark bag that you saw in the driveway that you...
They were close.
No, I'm going to sustain the objection.
The duffel bag, you indicated one of the duffel bags was unzipped. You recall that?
Yes.
And that duffel bag went into the passenger compartment in the rear area of the car?
Yes, it did.
And could that small dark bag that you saw, that you've indicated the position of in this photograph, People's 138, could that small dark bag have fit into the duffel bag?
Oh,
I don't know.
Was it smaller than the duffel bag?
I saw it from a distance, so I don't know exactly how big it was. It
Was it smaller than the duffel bag?
seemed
overruled.
seemed to be smaller.
Ms. Clark, do you have much more?
No, I don't, Your Honor. And that small dark bag, could that have been in the back seat with the defendant?
Yes.
Now, that garment bag... You got that bag? First of all, Mr. Park, when you saw the garment bag on June the 12th, you picked it up, did you?
Yes.
You loaded it into the trunk?
Yes.
Did it seem to contain clothing?
It's
Overruled.
it seemed to have something in it.
Have you looked in this bag today, sir?
No, I haven't.
Unzipping it. I'm going to ask you to tell us. You see any clothing in it now?
No.
You know what happened to the clothing that was in it on the night of June the 12th?
No.
You know where this bag has been since June the 12th?
No.
You know what happened to the items that were inside it?
No.
Did you see the contents of that bag on the night of June the 12th?
No.
And the golf bag that you were shown? I believe you indicated that exterior didn't look like the exterior you recall seeing on the night of June the 12th. You recall that?
Yes.
So do you think it was some other kind of exterior that was over the golf bag that night?
Yes.
And that exterior part, that sheath that you're describing, was that the part that you actually had contact with when you gave it to the sky cap and saw it in the trunk?
Yes.
And this black duffel bag, sir? Did it appear to have something in it on the night of June the 12th when you loaded it into the passenger area of the limousine?
Yes.
You see anything in it now, sir?
No.
You know what happened to the contents of that bag?
It doesn't feel like
Overruled.
No.
You know where that bag has been since June the 12th, sir?
I have no idea.
Or what happened to the contents of the bag that were there on June the 12th?
No idea.
When the defendant got out of the limousine at the airport, sir, were there any bags, any of his bags left in the passenger compartment?
No.
Were there any of his bags left in the trunk?
No.
I have nothing further.
All right. I take it you do have some recross?
Yes, I have some.
Okay.
You like to do that?
No, we're going to take a recess at this point. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a recess at this point. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case, conduct any deliberations, or allow anybody to contact you. We'll be in recess until 1:30. I'd like counsel here at 1:30. Mr. Park, you're excused until 1:30. All right, please remember my other orders. Right there. All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. All parties are again present with the exception of Ms. Clark. Mr. Cochran, you wish to be heard as to
Yes, Your
this
Honor, I'd like to
other...
be heard if I might. I'd like to ask leave of court to be able to ask Mr. Park a question regarding this particular bag, which I'd like to mark, and ask him whether or not this particular bag I have in my left hand here appears similar in size and shape and color to the bag that you saw from about 20 feet on the driveway. I think that this bag belongs to Mr. Simpson, and may have been one of the bags that he took to Chicago on that night. And the court is aware also that Mr. Park has previously seen this bag and indicated that it apparently reports are similar in size and shape or color to the bag that he saw from some 20 feet away. You can't say definitely. And I ask leave of court in view of the attack taken by the prosecution regarding this bag to be allowed to ask that question in the presence of the jury.
Mr. Darden?
As I understood the offer of proof counsel made at sidebar, it was that Mr. Simpson said that the bag might have been a bag he took to Chicago. He doesn't know. He can't say for sure. He thinks it's his bag. He has a lot of bags. Well, that doesn't give. That's no offer of proof. That's not much more than speculation. It's a complete non-committal on the part of the defense as to whether or not that bag is the one that was taken to Chicago. And they ought to know. To just throw things up here in front of this witness. Right, I believe. Well, the
No,
witness has seen
he's
the
already
bag.
he's already been interviewed in the presence of counsel.
There's a little more than trickery. Beyond that, the bag is new. It is apparent that nothing has ever been placed inside the bag. The keys are still attached to the bag, and the little plastic string that once to which was once attached the price tag, I guess, is still on the bag. The bag was recovered just today, I believe, at 11 o'clock this morning from Mr. Kardashian's home.
Yesterday.
Sorry?
Yesterday.
yesterday. It's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. This bag it helps us. It does not help the jury. And as Ms. Clark has reminded me, there could be millions of bags that perhaps fit the description given by Mr. Park. And Mr. Park has told the court at sidebar, and he's told the jury as well, that he did not get a good look at the bag. His memory is somewhat vague as to what the bag looked like exactly. I mean, it could be, it couldn't be. Where does that get us? How is that relevant? And so we would object to presenting that bag to the jury.
The idea that it's very hard for the prosecutors to ever argue anything without labeling everything. The trickery comes from these vague theories that change like the weather. All we're asking to do.
Is that not a gratuitous personal attack?
I'm referring to his remark about
Counsel,
trickery.
stop, both of you.
Your Honor, the court pleases. I'm asking the leave of court based upon the representation we gave, and based upon the fact this bag was recovered by Judge Wong yesterday, to be able to ask Mr. Wong regarding this. This matter was brought up by the prosecution. They've made great statements. Your Honor, could Mr. Darden please sit down and stop making sounds while I'm...
That's true. Why don't you have a seat, Mr. Darden?
Was I making sounds?
Yes, you were going, It's a nervous... Yes.
No, I was going,
Would you sit down now? It's that nervous twitch, so please. May I?
I thought it was,
It was, Wait, what was it? Your Honor. Yeah. Now.
I couldn't believe it.
Okay. Now, Your Honor, may I proceed? With regard to the prosecution's questioning of both Mr. Park and Mr. Cato Kalin, in this instance, all these bags were recovered. They were not recovered by the people. These bags were brought forward by the defense with the help of this court through the special master, and they're now in the court's custody. I want merely to ask the question the court knows that I want to ask. I've asked Mr. Park. It has probative value. It doesn't go to any weight. Goes to doesn't go to admissibility, rather goes to any weight. Everybody knows he was 20 feet away. He was 20 feet away when they were asking all those questions, too. But, I mean, fair is fair. You can't allow them, it seems to me, to do all these things and not allow us an opportunity to show what might very well have been in the bag. And that's all we're asking to do, Your Honor. I think it's entirely appropriate. With regard to the other bag he can't identify, I'm not asking anything regarding that. And I'd like to conclude my cross-examination with that.
Mr. Darden,
Your Honor, this offer of proof does not rise to the level of what very well might have been. Mr. Simpson knows which bag he took to Chicago. He hasn't said that this is the one. And given that, the defense should be precluded from just throwing things up here in front of the witnesses. I mean, they throw theories around the courtroom, regardless of whether they have a factual basis for them, and now they want to do the same thing with this bag. It's irrelevant. It has no probative value whatsoever. So, Mr. Cochran's making sounds behind my back, Your Honor.
All right, gentlemen.
In any event.
All right, thank you. I'm going to sustain the 352 objection for this reason. The offer of proof was this could possibly be, and the statement by Mr. Park with counsel at sidebar that does not look familiar, but he couldn't tell. You have, it's too speculative at this point, and the danger of misleading the jury is apparent, and the court will sustain the objection.
We have here my understanding regarding what Mr. Park said. This is Mr. Park said.
It's my understanding, Mr. Park, I've asked the court to ask him. What he said was that it was similar in both size, shape, and color, and that he was 20 feet away.
His initial comment to me was it doesn't look familiar.
But he did also say in his second
Counsel,
comment
I've got 8 bags in my chambers that are the same general color, general size.
8?
8. You want to count them?
No, you're not count them. But I thought I just want to make sure.
2 just for DNA materials.
I wanted to make sure the court was mindful of what he'd said in the second part of his question.
I did. I heard very carefully. I listened to Mr. Park very carefully. All right, thank you, counsel.
Okay, there is the issue of the other bag, right? The suede one?
That's not being offered, is my understanding.
Okay.
Mr.
The suede,
Gentlemen,
This-
mark this 1066.
Yes, for the record.
Okay.
All right.
okay, the suede bag is not being offered?
All right, we ready to proceed? All right, I do still have Judge Wong here available, but he would like to get out of here as soon as possible. Judge Wong is still here. He would like to leave, though, because he has other appointments.
We get your drag out to you.
All right, let's have the jurors, please. Oath, please. Couple of questions, Ms. Clark.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Mr. Park, when the defendant went over to the Sky Cap, what did you do?
I put the golf bags on the bigger, larger Skycap cart and the designer bag.
Okay. So you actually lifted that bag, that golf bag, did you?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you now to lift this bag for us and tell us if this is the approximate weight of the bag that you picked up and put on the Sky Cap's carrier.
It's close to it, yes.
And now this bag, sir, go ahead, take a seat. This bag, who took it out of the trunk of the car when you got to the airport?
From what I remember, Mr. Simpson.
And who put it, taking it from the trunk, who put it onto the luggage carrier that you brought out of the airport?
I was holding the luggage carrier and he set it on the rack.
And when he picked up that bag and took it out of the trunk and put it onto the luggage carrier, did he complain to you of any pain in his arms or his shoulders?
No, he didn't.
When Mr. Simpson was over by the Sky Cap, sir, did you see, other than the garment bag and the golf bag, did you see where the other bags were?
From what I remember, there was, he had the one over his shoulder, and there was another one sitting on top of a trash can next to this Skycap stand.
So there was a bag sitting on top of the trash can next to the Sky Cap stand?
Yes.
Did you see Mr. Simpson do anything with respect to the bag on top of the trash can?
No, I didn't.
After you got Mr. Simpson over to the Sky Cap area, and that bag was on top of the trash can, and the garment bag and the golf bag were given to the Sky Cap, what did you do?
I walked over to him, and that's when I was getting ready to leave, and shook his hand, said add 20%, and that was it.
So you left at that point.
Yes.
Did you see Mr. Simpson enter the airport terminal?
Oral.
Not at that point. When I got back into the car, after I checked the car to see if he left anything, I drove away, looked down the terminal, and he was on his way to the airport, or to the plane.
Did you see what he was carrying?
No.
Mr. Cochran.
So as I understand your testimony, Mr. Park, good afternoon, first of all.
Good afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen. As I understand your testimony, basically the last thing that you did with Mr. Simpson was you shook hands with him, and then you took your leave. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you'd had a rather pleasant encounter with him. Is that a fair statement to say, based upon the fact you got in there on time and everything went well?
Yes.
And in fact, he had said to add 20% to the bill, right?
Correct.
All right. And first of all, with regard to the golf bag that was taken over here, this was the first night that you had ever seen Mr. OJ Simpson. Is that correct? In your life, on June 12th?
Personally, yes.
Yes, personally. I mean, personally, when the two of you were together.
Yes.
And in your first meeting with Mr. Simpson, he didn't share with you his life secrets about him having rheumatoid arthritis or things like that, did he?
Oral.
No.
And you're not surprised by that, are you, sir?
No, I'm not.
You didn't share with him any maladies that you may have, even at your young age, did you?
No, I didn't.
All right. You were just trying to get to that airport on time, isn't that correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, sir, with regard to questions you were asked whether or not you were in a hurry, and you indicated to Ms. Clark at some point that you were, in fact, in a hurry, again, because you wanted to get Mr. Simpson to the airport on time. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
And you previously told us already that at some point you drove perhaps as fast as 75 or 80 so you could accomplish your goal. right?
Correct.
Which you did, right?
Yes.
And recall Ms. Clark asked you some questions about whether or not you were looking or paying attention to Mr. Simpson's body or his hands. You remember those questions?
Yes.
You would have remembered, would you have not, if Mr. Simpson had a Band-Aid, a large Band-Aid on this left knuckle here, would stand out. You'd remember that, wouldn't you?
If I saw it, yes.
You never saw that night, did you?
No.
All right. Now, with regard to the time you were waiting and trying to get inside the Ashford Gate, would I be correct in assuming that your attention at that time was you were concerned about trying to locate somebody inside the premises and reaching your client? Isn't that correct?
Yes.
In fact, it was so much so that you not only called your boss, but you also called your mother. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
During that time frame. And that pretty much was your focus. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And when you testified at the preliminary hearing as follows, counsel again at page 40. 40? Yes, page 40. Beginning at line 17. Line 15. Proceed. Question, when you asked these questions and gave these answers to Ms. Clark, what gate did you leave from? Answer, the Rockingham gate. Question, and which way did you go on Rockingham as you exited the gate? Answer, I made a left. And question, did you look to see whether any cars were parked on the right side as you faced the driveway of Rockingham outside the residence? Your answer was, I didn't look to see. Question, you weren't looking at the parked cars? And your answer was, yeah. You weren't looking at parked cars that night because your focus was on something else. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
As you told us before, you can't be positive whether or not there's any parked cars parked there to the right of the gate when you came out of that gate. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And when you testified at the grand jury in that connection, you were again trying to be as accurate and as factual as you could. Were you not?
Yes, I was.
Counsel, let's begin at page 270, about line 21. And let's go over to page 272, line 14. Question. Oh, I'm sorry, grand jury. Reading it all. Recall being asked these series of questions by Ms. Clark on June 17th, 1994. Question, when you pulled out of the driveway of the suspect's house, what driveway exit did you use, Ashford or Rockingham? Answer, Rockingham. Question, when you pulled out of the Rockingham gate, were you able to see any car parked on the street next to that gate? Answer, there was a vehicle to my left. When I was exiting, I noticed I had to look around a vehicle. I never noticed what kind of vehicle it was. I didn't pay any attention to that. But there was a vehicle there. Question, you say a vehicle to your left. That would be the area I'm indicating with my pen. Answer, correct. Why don't you mark that? You said you noticed a vehicle down there. Answer, yes. Witness complies. Go ahead and have a seat. You exited out of the gate that feeds onto Rockingham. Is that right? Answer, yes. So you're on the left side of your car, right? Answer, yes. And you're going to make a left out of the gate. Answer, that's correct. So you're looking to your left for traffic, for oncoming traffic. Answer, yeah, both ways. Question, did you attempt to look very carefully to see whether cars were parked on the other side of the driveway? I presume that means to the right side. Answer, there were no cars. Well, she's right, and I can help read it the other way, but I'm
All
Oh,
just
right,
trying to
let's
make
read
it
the
clear.
transcript, counsel.
Did you attempt to look very carefully to see whether cars were parked on the other side of the driveway? Answer, there were no cars. Question, are you sure? Answer, I'm pretty sure. Question, did you make an effort to look and see if there were any cars there? Answer, I looked to the right to see if there were any cars coming down the street. Well, I'm asking you if you made an effort to see if there was a car parked. Answer, no. Was that a correct answer? At that
Yes.
time? All right. And question, there might have been a car parked there and you didn't see it. Answer correct. And the reason why you don't know one way or the other is because you weren't focusing on any cars or paying any attention. Isn't that right?
That's
Master witness. And basically your focus was to get Mr. OJ Simpson, try to get him to the airport on time. Isn't that correct?
that's correct.
And that's what you ended up doing, isn't it, sir?
Yes.
Now, have you ever heard the engine of a Ford Bronco?
What year?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see. Well, let's start with my question first. Have you ever heard the engine of any Ford Bronco?
Yes.
And what year was the Ford Bronco that you heard?
I've heard a lot of them.
Have you? Well,
Yeah. Well,
Until-
older cars seem to, some of the older Broncos seem to be a little bit louder
All right.
than the new ones.
All right. Let's see. What's the newest Ford Bronco that you've heard?
I think it was an 88.
An 88? And what's the oldest?
It'd have to be somewhere around a 70, 72.
A pretty old one, is that right?
Yeah.
All right. And how long ago was it that you heard the engine of the 88 Ford Bronco?
Oh, I don't remember that.
Sometime in your past?
Yes.
All right. And would it be correct in assuming those engines can be loud on occasion, those cars?
Could be.
You didn't hear the engines on any cars or anything that sounded like a Ford Bronco that night, did you?
No.
Now, Ms. Clark asked you some questions about this figure that was walking into the walkway there, the Rockingham residence. Is that correct?
Yes.
Remember that? And you recall that as you testified for us, the figure was walking towards the door when you first observed that figure, right?
Yes.
And you saw that figure for only a second or so. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you told us that the figure was attired in something dark, and it could have been a robe. You don't know what it was. Is that correct?
Overruled.
Could have been a robe. Is that correct?
Just seemed to be dark clothing. Could have been anything.
Right. Yes. Could have been anything because you don't know. Is that right?
That's true.
You got just a fleeting glance. Isn't that right, sir?
Yes.
So you never had a chance to see the hem of a robe swirling around or anything of that nature, did you?
No.
And with regard to this time frame, you shared with us that it was your belief that the time that you saw this figure to the time that you saw Mr. Simpson come down with the bag, which we now know as the Louis Vuitton bag, one of the defendant's exhibits, about 5 or 6 minutes had passed. Isn't that correct?
Overruled.
And that's about 5 or 6 minutes. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And that's your best estimate. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you've done that throughout your testimony here. Give us your honest and best estimate. Isn't that right, sir?
Yes.
And you've done that with regard to that 5 or 6 minute period of time, right?
Yes.
When you were shown People's 112 for identification, the foyer area of the Simpson residence there, do you recall on that night whether or not there was ever a rug anywhere in that foyer area when you were in there, when you were inside there?
No.
You recall that you walked some 2 to 3 feet in yourself, but you don't remember seeing a rug or any kind, right?
No.
Is that right? Now, you never went out and looked, and you were asked some questions about looking in the play yard for golf balls. You never did that, did you?
No, I didn't.
Ken, you weren't there to look for golf balls? Well,
Overruled.
you didn't go around looking at Mr. Simpson's premises for any golf balls or anything, did you?
No.
You came there to do a job, and you tried to do that job. Is that right, sir?
That's correct.
Overruled.
You came there to pick him up, and you left.
That's
As soon
correct.
as you could, right?
Yes.
You were asked some questions on redirect examination by Ms. Clark regarding the location of this smaller bag that was some 20 feet away from you. Recall that?
Yes.
As you think back in your mind's eye, if you think back in your mind's eye, Can you tell us how far that second bag was away from the second car, if the second car was there?
Do you understand the question, sir?
Yes.
You may answer.
It seemed to be 3 to 5 feet behind the back bumper
Of which car?
of the second car.
In other words, so if we could put that diagram up, it would be behind where you believe the back bumper of the second car,
Yes.
not the Bentley. Is that right?
Yes.
I understand your testimony. Mr. Cato Kalin had placed the golf clubs in the back of the limousine at Rockingham. Is that right?
Yes.
And with regard to these golf clubs, they marked as one of our exhibits. $1063 for identification.
Yes,
May I approach, Your Honor?
you may.
Sure. Believe that as you lifted that the items that you lifted that night appear about the same weight as that.
About
Is
to
that-
go, it looks like it's about to go over.
Oh, wait a minute. Stand there with it, man. It's your testimony that when you lifted this item on the night of June 12th, 1984, it appeared to be about the same weight. Is that right?
That's correct.
And this morning, you remember I asked you some questions about this particular insignia of the Swiss Army Brand Limited. Would it change your testimony evolve at all if I were to tell you that
Sustained.
I haven't said it yet, Your Honor?
The way it was phrased, I don't think it was appropriate.
All right, well, may I approach for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. With regard to this bag, this golf bag covered with a sheath of some kind, are you acquainted with custom-made golf bags? Seen those before?
Yes.
And
Overruled.
are you aware that this is a custom-made golf bag? But, may I finish? Are you aware that this is a custom?
Finish the question.
Okay.
Finish the question.
Are you aware that this is a custom-made golf bag by the Swiss
And-
Army Brands Limited?
Does this appear to you to be?
Okay, yes, Your Honor. Does this strike you? Thank you.
Overruled.
Does this appear to you to be a custom-made golf bag by Swiss Army Brands Limited?
It appears to be.
Do you have any idea how many custom-made golf bags were made like that one before you there by Swiss Army Limited?
I have no idea.
Do you know whether or not these custom-made golf bags by Swiss Army Limited were only for special customers?
Don't know that either.
Do you know whether or not they were ever commercially sold?
No.
Now, you were asked a series of questions by Ms. Clark about what was in these various bags, and you have no knowledge at all of what was in the bags. Isn't that correct?
No, I don't.
Again, your job was to get the bags and the client to the airport. Is that right?
Overruled.
Yes.
Did you see the skycap who waited on you and Mr. Simpson that night, or was there a skycap who waited on you?
There was a few around. I saw him, but I wouldn't recognize him.
You didn't recognize him?
I mean, I wouldn't recognize him now if I saw him.
If you saw whatever this individual was a male, I presume?
Yes.
And if you saw him again, you would not recognize him. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And with regard to your conversation with the detectives Tippett and Carr, when you became aware they were going to look in the back of the limousine on or about the 15th of June, where was the limousine at that time?
It was at Dale St. John's in his
And that's where-
garage.
And that's where you had taken it after you dropped Mr. Simpson off that particular night?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not Swiss Army Brand Limited makes any other decal for golf, for specially made golf bag covers?
Do I? I don't know if they do or not.
All right.
I've seen other labels.
But do you know whether or not they make any other decals for the specially made golf bags?
No.
All right. Thank you very kindly, Mr. Barber.
Ms. Clark? Sure.
Mr. Park, during the time you spent with Mr. Simpson on the night of June the 12th, were you looking at his hands?
Ask and answer them.
Overruled.
Properly.
No, it was asked on
No.
recross.
No, I wasn't.
So if he'd been wearing a Band-Aid, would you have noticed it then?
No.
Did Mr. Simpson, excuse me, and when you were at the Rockingham location, sir, before you saw the person walking into the front entrance of the house at about between 10:54 and 10:55, had you been listening for Ford Broncos?
I wasn't listening for anything.
So could one have driven by either on Rockingham or Ashford without you noticing?
Overruled.
Repeat it?
Could a Ford Bronco have driven by on either Rockingham or Ashford without you noticing?
Yes.
And did Mr. Simpson seem to have any trouble lifting that golf bag onto the luggage carrier or taking it out of the trunk?
Sustained. That's beyond the scope.
Beyond the scope.
Sustained. Sustained.
Can we approach, Your Honor, on the scope issue? Was gone into.
Okay.
When Mr. Simpson picked up that golf bag out of the trunk of the limo and put it onto the luggage carrier, did he seem to have any difficulty in lifting it?
See that the process speculation.
Overruled.
Not that I noticed, no.
Thank you, sir. Nothing further.
Cochran.
When he lifted it up and placed it on this luggage cart or whatever, you weren't paying attention about whether he had difficulty or not, did you?
No.
Because you were thinking about it was now over, you were going to go home, isn't that right?
Yes.
Overruled.
It was 11:35 on Sunday night, and I presume you wanted to get home, didn't you?
Correct.
Objection beyond the scope.
Overruled.
And you went home after that, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You'd like to go home now, would you?
Sure would.
Got it.
Ms. Clark.
Did you watch Mr. Simpson as he picked it up out of the trunk and put it on the luggage carrier, sir?
Yes, yes.
Overruled.
I'm sure I was watching him, but I didn't pay any attention to it.
You didn't see him grunt or groan, make any movements?
No.
Just that young still.
All right, well, the answer will stand. I think we finished this topic, though. All right. Mr. Park, thank you very much for coming in. I'm going to excuse you at this time. However, you are still subject to being called as a witness. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, I do.
All right. Don't discuss your testimony with anybody except for your own attorney or the attorneys on the case.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next witness.
Okay.
All right. Judge Wong. All right. Thank you, counsel.
Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause not pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat for witness stand and state spell your first and last names for the record.
Sure. Maybe we go just one. Oh, no.
Sure. Without the
Judge Wong, you are a retired Superior Court judge, sir?
That's correct.
Okay. And in connection with this case, you've been acting as a special master, is that right?
That is also correct.
Okay. And what is a special master, Judge?
A special master is a person who is appointed to carry out certain specific assignments.
Okay. And in this case, were you given an assignment by Judge Ito?
That is correct.
Okay. And were you given an assignment directing you to retrieve certain items on March 28, 1995?
That is correct.
Okay. And showing you, or rather directing your attention to the golf bag in front of you, Defendant's Exhibit 1063. Do you recognize this bag?
Yes.
On what date and at what time did you recover that bag?
I recovered the bag yesterday,
Okay. What time of the day, if you recall?
about 4 o'clock.
Okay. And who else was present?
Mr. Kardashian.
The gentleman standing here,
Yes.
one of Mr. Simpson's lawyers, Robert Kardashian?
Yes.
And from where, or from what location did you recover that bag?
This was in the garage at 360 North Rockingham.
Someone point that bag out to you?
Yes, Mr. Kardashian did.
You didn't search the garage, I take it?
Pardon?
You didn't search the garage?
No, I did not.
Okay, you didn't search any portion of the house?
No, that was
Judge-
not my assignment.
Okay. Your assignment was to go see Mr. Kardashian, who would point out certain items to you.
And I was to take possession of those items.
And showing you what has been marked Defendant's 1062, a Louis Vuitton garment bag, sir.
Yes.
You recognize that bag?
Yes, I recognize it.
That bag yesterday?
Yes.
From where, sir?
This was from the second story master bedroom. It was in a closet to the right of the vanity.
Okay. Was it on a shelf in the closet?
It was on top shelf.
And was that bag pointed out to you by Mr. Kardashian?
Yes.
Were there other Louis Vuitton bags similar
I
to
don't
that
know
one?
if there were Louis Vuittons, but there were several other bags of various sorts in the closet.
Okay. But that particular bag was pointed out to you by Mr. Kardashian?
Yes.
At the defendant's house?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Was there anything inside the bag when Mr. Kardashian pointed it out to you?
No, I did not open the bag. The bag is intact.
Okay. And you did not open the golf bag?
No, I did not.
So you delivered those bags to the court in the condition in which you found them, sir?
That's correct.
And showing you what has been marked Defendant's Exhibit 1065. The black garment bag or suit bag. Recognize that bag, sir?
Yes, this is the garment bag that we recovered from the master bedroom.
At the defendant's house?
Yes.
And where in the defendant's house was that bag?
This was in a closet to the left of the television in the defendant's master bedroom.
Okay, and that was pointed out to you by Mr. Kardashian?
Yes.
Okay. And to go back to the golf clubs for a moment, did you recover those golf clubs from the defendant's house or from Mr. Kardashian's house?
No, the golf clubs, no, you're right. The golf clubs came from Mr. Kardashian's house
Okay. In Encino?
in Encino.
Okay. And they were in the garage?
Yes.
In Mr. Kardashian's garage?
Yes.
Do you know how they came to end up in Mr. Kardashian's garage?
No.
And do you know the history or the chain of custody regarding any of these items?
No, I do not.
You don't know where they were prior to your recovery?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Judge Wong.
Good afternoon.
As a special master, you work along with Judge Ito to retrieve certain items of evidence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you've been a special master in this case for some time now, have you not?
Yes, since June, I believe.
June of 1994?
That's correct.
And you retrieved other items of evidence, isn't that
Yes.
correct? Well, I'd like to go
I'll
into.
just let that stand at this point.
Okay, I'd like to ask him some questions, and I'd like to approach and ask before I ask those questions.
Let's approach the side record. Thank you, Counsel. Mr. Cochran, do you have any further questions? for
Just a
Judge
few
Wong?
other questions, Your Honor. Thank you very kindly. The Judge Wong, in this instance, you were requested to meet Mr. Robert Kardashian yesterday at about 3 o'clock to retrieve, at 3 o'clock in Mr. Simpson's home to retrieve certain items located there. Is
That's
that right?
correct.
All right. And by the way, with regard to the Louis Vuitton bag, did you notice whether or not there's any luggage tag on that bag?
Yes, there are some luggage tags.
This luggage tag on here apparently from some American Airlines, is it not?
Yes, American Airlines, and the tag indicates Chicago O'Hare Airport,
And it has a flight number somewhere on, I presume?
668.
And was that luggage tag on that bag when it was pointed out to you in Mr. Simpson's closet?
Yes, it
yesterday?
was.
And then you then brought that luggage in its present form to court this morning, as I understand it.
That's correct.
And the, we'll call it garment bag, the black garment bag on top thereof was also found in one of the Mr. Simpson's closets. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then the golf bag here that I'm now touching, the Swiss Army logo, so that we're clear for the record, that bag was also found in Mr. Kardashian's garage. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that was in Mr. Kardashian's garage.
And you accompanied him to that location. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And with regard to the that bag also, it has a particular flight number, does it not?
Yes, American Airlines Flight 1103.
And does it show where 1103 flew into?
Los Angeles.
All right, and so these items are in the same condition they were in when you found them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
If I were to hold up this item here, this black bag here. I'm gonna hold up this black bag here. Did you make recovery of this also?
Pardon?
Did you make recovery of this bag?
No, I did not.
Just a second.
Certainly.
May I approach, Your Honor? Thank you very much, Judge Wong.
All right, Mr. Jordan, any further questions for Judge Wong?
Judge, the garment bag shows flight number.
The garment bag shows Flight 668, American Airlines to Chicago O'Hare.
That's to Chicago. Is that correct?
That is correct.
not to Los Angeles.
That's what it says, Chicago.
Okay. And showing you the golf bag. What is the flight number on this bag?
American Airlines 1103, LAX.
So the garment bag and the golf bag then show tags for different flights. Is that right?
That's correct.
You're aware that the murders occurred on June 12, 1994?
Sustained.
Okay. Well, is there a date and time stamp on the garment bag?
The date is June 13 on the garment bag.
And is there a time as well on that tag?
2332, which would be just a little before midnight.
On June 13.
That's correct.
Is that military time?
That is military time,
11:32 p.m.
1132.
Judge, do you see a date on the tag for the?
Golf bag bears the date.
You're welcome.
Time is 0921, 13th of June.
So the golf bag then apparently was booked at 9:21 a.m. on June 13th.
That is correct.
By the way, your retrieval of these bags or these items, that was made pursuant to a defense request. Is that right?
That was, my instructions were from Judge Ito.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
With regard to just one last question.
One last question.
Well, maybe two. Judge Wong, with regard to these items, so that we're clear, abundantly clear, these items were picked up by you here in Los Angeles, California, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yesterday.
Yesterday, that's correct.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Judge, thank you very much. You're excused, sir. And Mr. Doherty, can I get you to collect those items and give them back to Mrs. Robertson? Thank you. Certainly. Panel, people may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. People call Mr. James Williams.
All right, Mr. Williams, come forward. Face the clerk, please.
Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please have a seat in the witness stand and state and spell your first and last names for the record.
Says on my first name,
And last name.
James Williams, James, Williams, Williams.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Clark.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Afternoon.
A little bit nervous?
Yeah.
All right. It won't be bad. Would you like some of your own?
Yeah, is the water fresh?
It's from someone else.
Can I have some water? I'm thirsty. The water out there is hot.
It's not hot, it's toxic.
Tastes like metal.
Yeah.
It tastes like metal.
But you're still alive.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get you some good water.
All right, Ms. Clark.
Sir, as of June the 12th, 1994, where were you employed?
At LAX at American Airlines, where I'm a SkyCap, contracted out from American, employed by Huntley.
Employed by?
Huntley, USA.
Can you spell that, sir? Huntley?
Huntley, capital HUNTLEIGH.
And then you contracted out through them to work as a SkyCap for American Airlines?
Mm-hmm.
Was that yes?
Yes.
You have to say yes or no
Okay.
for the reporter. All right. And what were your duties as a SkyCap?
Check bags for passengers, passenger assistance. Check bags on the curbside. Just passenger assistance.
And how long had you been working as a SkyCap as of June the 12th, 1994?
As a SkyCap, about a year and a half.
What were your work times back then?
At that time, I had a straight 7 o'clock shift. It was 7 in the evening to 2 in the morning.
And on the date of June the 12th, 1994, did you start work at 7 p.m.?
Yes, I did.
And were you still at work at about 11:30 p.m.?
Yes, I was.
Did someone approach you about 11:30 p.m. to ask you for help with some bags that you happen to recall?
Yes.
Can you please tell us what happened in that regard?
You want me to tell you what happened after?
Well, first tell me, do you recall a young Caucasian man coming up to you and asking you for help with bags?
Yes.
What happened after he asked you for help?
Well, he asked me for help, and I was helping somebody at the time. So I told him I'd be with him in a minute, and he went inside. He seemed a little hurried because he wanted to get the bags checked, I guess. And so he ran inside to go get a cart so he could get them himself. And then he went back to the limousine.
Did you see him get a cart, sir?
I didn't see him get it, but I saw him with it after he came back out. Because I was helping somebody, so I didn't pay much attention to him after that.
And did you see where he took that cart to?
He took it to the limo.
You saw a limo?
Yes.
How far was that limo from your podium?
I'd have to say it was about 20 yards, 25 yards.
25 yards?
It was a good, about 25 yards.
And after you saw him take the luggage carrier over to the limo, what happened next?
Well, I just saw him take the luggage cart over there. I didn't really pay attention to him getting the bags out because I was helping someone. So, I just finished helping who I was helping, and I was almost finished with the person I was helping, and I saw him walking back up.
The same guy?
Yes.
And when he came walking back up, did he have a luggage carrier with him?
Yes, he had.
Did he
had
have
the little cart with the bags on it.
Okay. And what bags were on that cart, sir?
He had a golf bag and 2 other bags. No, he had a golf bag and 1 other bag.
Can you describe the golf bag?
It was a dark colored golf bag. Dark colored golf bag. It was.
Could it have been, when you say dark color, does that include navy blue or black?
Yeah, like navy blue, black.
1063? Is it March? Is that? Yeah, it is. Thank you. Showing you what's been marked as defendant's 1063, sir. Can you tell us, please, if you recognize this particular bag, sir?
Yeah, that's a black golf bag. I didn't pay that. I didn't just analyze the bag and check. I just checked it.
Analyze it, just checked it?
Just checked it.
All right. So can you tell us whether or not that was one of the bags on the luggage carrier that the young man had?
Yeah, I could say that's one of the bags.
Pardon?
Yes. Yes, it could be the golf bag.
Could be.
Yes. I mean, like I said, I didn't memorize and look at the golf bag that closely, but
And there was some other bag on top, on the luggage carrier as well, sir?
yeah,
And can you describe that bag?
it was like well, I remember it was a hanging bag.
And by hanging bag, do you mean a garment bag?
Yeah, for hanging clothes if you don't want to get messed up. Mm-hmm. It folds over, but
It can be folded, but it can hang straight?
yeah,
All right.
yes.
And do you recall what that looked like?
Same with the golf bag. I mean, it was just a regular bag. I mean, I see so many. I mean, that's why I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But I just know it was another bag there.
Do you remember whether it was one of those designer bags or not? That
No,
had
I
those
couldn't.
logos on it?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. So who was pushing the luggage carrier, sir?
The Caucasian man.
And was there someone else with that young Caucasian man?
I didn't notice the other person at first. He was standing like out of my sight. When I first turned, I was facing the podium, helping the people I was helping. And then after I finished with them, I turned to my left and I asked him if he needed help. And then that was at that time that I noticed through my peripheral vision I could see someone else standing there, and it was
Could you see who that was?
yes,
Who was that?
Mr. Simpson.
Is that someone you see in court today, sir?
Yes,
Okay. Can you point him out?
Mr. Simpson.
Okay.
Indicating the defendant.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Simpson.
Okay. And was Mr. Simpson carrying anything when you saw him?
Yes, he had a bag.
What kind of bag?
It was like a little duffel bag.
A duffel bag?
Yeah,
And what color was it?
it was dark colored too, from what I remember. I mean, like I said, I didn't, pay specific attention to it.
Okay. Could you tell us, sir, how he was carrying that duffel bag, in his hand or on his shoulder?
When I saw him, it was on his shoulder.
On his shoulder?
Yeah.
All right. Now, did you personally check any of the bags for the young man or Mr. Simpson?
Yeah, I checked 2 bags.
What bags did you check?
The golf club and the hanging bag.
Now, when you check bags in, sir, do you create some paperwork or tag them in any way?
Well, you have to pull the tags from the computer. Mm-hmm. And they're automatic. They just come out when you pull them out. And you just put them on the bags.
Okay. Now, the tags that come out of that computer, sir, are they stamped with date and time?
Yes, they are. Matter of fact, yeah.
And when to your knowledge, sir, are tags placed on, can you strike that? When you place the tags on the bags that you're checking, does it reflect the date and time at which you place those tags on the bag?
Yeah, it tells you that, the tag was pulled at this time and on this date by this sky cap. It has a number. It has like the date, the time, and then, it has the code, my code that I have to use to get into the computer.
So that date and time shows when the bags were checked in?
Yes.
And does that occur as well when the bags return? Are they tagged with date and time when they come back from wherever they've been, or does that only occur when they're being checked in to board a flight?
When they're just when they're being checked in. I mean, either way. I mean, if you check your bags in Chicago and they pull it out of the computer, it's the date and time is on there.
I'm going to show you the exhibit that's marked as defendant 1063. Ask you to look at the tag on this bag, sir. Do you recognize the tag that I'm showing you here? And for the record, Your Honor, it's a tag that says LAX AA 1103. Do you recognize that tag?
Yes, a regular American Airlines tag.
Is that the kind? Is that the kind of tag that you would put on the bag when you check it in?
Yes, it is.
And if you can tell us, sir, then the information on this tag, LAX at the top, what does that mean to you?
Los Angeles. That's where the bag is destined to go. To
Okay.
LA.
Well, that's the destination?
Yeah, that's the destination. LA.
So then this tag would have been put on somewhere else because it was flying to LA.
Yeah, I can tell you right. Bag was checked in
Mr.
Chicago.
Williams, I need you to speak into the microphone.
Yes, this bag was checked in Chicago.
And you can tell that by,
Looking right here, ORD means Chicago. It's the code for Chicago at 9:21 on the
9:21,
13th of June.
9:21 in the morning, sir?
I couldn't tell you that. Yeah, because it's military time. So yes,
Okay. So this bag was checked in Chicago on June 13th at 9:21
yes,
in the morning.
yes,
And that means checked. And that means checked at the Chicago airport to go to LAX at that time.
yes. That's not the tag I pulled.
I'm sorry?
That's not the tag I pulled. I'm just
Right.
stating that.
Right, because you were working in LA.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm showing you an item that's been previously marked as defendant's 1062. I'll show you, Your Honor, for the record, it's a tag that says ORDAA 668. Do you recognize that tag, sir?
Yes.
What is that?
American Airlines tag.
And is that like a tag that you would put on there?
Yes.
And what does that ORD at the top mean?
O'Hare, Chicago O'Hare Airport.
And that means that this bag was checked, and its destination was Chicago O'Hare?
Yes.
And can you tell us what time this bag was checked in? Sorry about that.
The bag was checked in at 11:32 on June 13th.
Checked in at 11:32 on June,
Yes.
11:32 p.m., sir?
Yes.
On June the 13th?
Yes.
And it was checked in at what airport?
LAX.
And is that shown here as well?
Yes, right there.
Right there, where it says LAX.
And that's my code.
Oh, and where's your code, sir?
H03.
H03?
H03.
H. That means that it was you?
Yeah.
So you checked this bag in at LAX on June the 13th at 11:32?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It was 12.
You didn't write that on there, did you, sir?
No, the computer prints it automatically.
Do you know whether those computers are accurate with respect to date or time?
Usually they are, but sometimes they have been known to have maybe be, minutes off or something.
All right, then with respect to that garment bag, it would appear that you were the one that checked that in, sir?
Yes.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right, sir, now, the date I'm talking to you about with respect to checking in the bags for Mr. Simpson was June the 12th, correct?
Correct.
Are you surprised to see the date of June the 13th on that bag, on that garment bag?
Yes.
Can you explain how June the 13th got on that garment bag?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. why it says June 13th.
Something with a computer.
Yeah, because I don't punch in the date. If the person is in the computer, it comes out automatically. So I
You don't have
punch
anything to do with setting the date on the computer?
it. I don't do that.
Okay. Now, did you ask the defendant where he was destined for before you punched out the tags?
Yes.
And did he tell you?
Yes.
And where was that?
Chicago.
And did he make any inquiry of you as to whether or not the bags would make it onto the plane?
He asked me if they would make. He pretty much asked me, yeah, if they would make it.
And what did you say?
I told him, yeah.
Did you give him some paperwork or something with respect to the bags that you checked?
Yeah, I gave him his claim checks for the bags.
And about what time was it when you did that, sir?
About 11:30.
Now, you indicated that he was carrying a dark duffel bag,
Yes.
showing you what's been marked previously as defendant's 1064. See this bag, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes. I'm
Can
sorry.
you tell us? It's okay. Can you tell us if this is this looks like the bag you saw him carrying that night?
Yes.
Can you tell us if this was the bag he was carrying that night?
I couldn't tell you if it was the bag.
Looks like.
Looks like it.
Could you tell us if it appeared to be full or empty?
It has something in it. I'm not sure what, but I mean, you know, it wasn't weighing him down or anything like that.
He had that on his shoulder.
Yes.
Did he check that bag in with you?
No.
What did he do with that bag?
He kept it with him.
Is there a trash can anywhere near your stand where you work?
Yes, just to the left of it.
The left of it as you face it?
If I'm facing the podium's here, the keyboard and everything, screen is here, and I say right over here is a trash can.
Okay, so if you're working at your podium, it would have been to your left.
Yeah, left and a little behind me.
A little behind you?
Yeah, a little behind me, not far.
Now, when you saw the defendant, sir, what was he wearing?
What I remember, it was a denim outfit. It was like some, like jeans, but you know, jeans, light shirt, a light colored shirt.
Could it have been a denim type, light denim shirt?
Yes.
Light colored denim shirt?
Mm-hmm. And
Was that
denim
yes?
shirt. Yes, yes. Keep kidding.
How many bags did the defendant have, sir?
Just the 3.
Okay. The 2 you checked and the 1 he carried?
Yes.
Did you see any other bags with him?
No.
Did the defendant give you a tip?
Yes.
What money did he give you?
He gave me a 20, and I gave him back 2 5s.
He gave you a $20 bill?
Yes.
You gave him back 2 $5 bills?
Yes.
Is that the only time you've checked Mr. Simpson in for a flight?
Yeah, because I wasn't a sky cap the other times I'd seen him.
All right, did you have a conversation with anyone the day after these events that we've just discussed on June the 12th?
Yes.
Was that a friend of yours?
Another sky cap.
And after you had that conversation with your friend, what did that cause you to do with respect to your memory of the events of checking Mr. Simpson in on the night of June the 12th?
Try to recollect what happened that night.
And did that cause you to reflect on everything that had happened, the number of bags checked and everything you saw?
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
So you only saw one black duffel bag, is that right?
Yeah, that's all I saw, yes. aside from the other 2 bags.
The 2 you checked?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes. I
Those
keep
2 that you
forgetting.
checked- I know. The 2 that you checked, though, neither one of them were duffel bags.
No.
The only duffel bag you saw was the one he carried in over his shoulder?
Oh, well. You can ask the question. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, that's the only one I paid attention to. I mean,
Thank you.
Mr. Douglas?
Williams, good afternoon, sir.
good afternoon.
Mr. Williams, how long, sir, had you been working as a skycap as of June the 12th of 1994?
About a year and a half.
For about a year and a half?
Yes.
And, sir, typically, what would be the number of passengers that you would check baggage for in a given, let's say, a given hour?
That depends on the day, because some days are busier than other days.
What would be your average if you were to estimate how many customers you tend to handle in a typical hour?
In a typical hour, maybe 15, 20, maybe.
15 to 20 per hour.
Yeah, you know.
And frequently, each of these passengers, these 15 or 20 per hour, will often have more than one bag. True?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be unusual for you to see dozens of bags in any given hour, considering all the passengers that you're handling. True?
True. Yes.
Now, there came a time on a Sunday evening, you say, when this fellow came up to you asking about checking in some baggage, correct?
Correct.
And later you realized that there was a passenger with this person who was Mr. Simpson, true?
Excuse me, repeat the question.
You later realized that this person that had come to you was handling bags for Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
didn't you? And Mr. Simpson came to you on a Sunday evening, didn't he?
Yes.
He didn't come the next day on Monday evening as well, did he?
No.
And part of the process of your checking in the baggage was to verify Mr. Simpson's flight schedule on the computer there, correct?
Correct.
And you were able to verify that Mr. Simpson was in fact booked on a flight that evening, didn't you?
Yes.
Now, there's certain information that you put into the computer before one of these claim checks are printed out, correct?
Yes.
Part of the information that you put in would be the destination of the passenger.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what I have to. The first thing you have to put in is how many bags are checked, what's the flight number, final destination, name of the passenger, and how many people are in the party.
Okay. And what is your practice, sir, when there is an old tag on the bag that you are going to check in? Is it your practice to take off the old tags first?
Yeah, either take it off or scribble up, mark over it so it doesn't interfere with the tag.
That's so that the baggage handlers will not confuse one destination from an old tag,
Yeah.
as opposed to the current destination, correct? Okay. Now, every bag that is checked in has to have a luggage tag placed on it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And when there is a bag that someone is taking on the airplane with them, there's no need to check that bag in necessarily, correct?
Correct. If they're taking it on, you don't check it in.
So that if somebody is carrying a bag, let's say that someone is carrying a bag to Los Angeles from Chicago, that they had checked in Los Angeles to Chicago, but they carried that bag on the airplane with them back from Chicago, there wouldn't be an LAX tag on that particular bag, would there?
You're saying he checked it in LA.
Let's assume, for example, let's take the garment bag, which would be exhibit 1062.
Okay.
And if this tag has certain information, this means that this piece of luggage was checked in from Los Angeles to Chicago, correct?
Correct.
And then it was placed on a conveyor belt to go to the airplane, correct?
Correct.
And if the person who owned this bag brought it back from Chicago on the airplane with him, it would still have the ORD tag on it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, unless he took it off, it'll stay on there.
Okay. And if, for example, that same person was bringing back not only the bag that he's carrying on, but another bag that they're checking in Chicago to come to Los Angeles, it would be the practice to take off that old tag, would it not?
Yeah, you should take the old tag off because you don't want them to.
Will. So that you cannot tell whether or not this golf club bag was checked in at LAX to Chicago because you don't have that tag on there, correct?
Yeah.
But you can tell that this bag was checked in at Chicago to come back to Los Angeles on June 13th. True?
Yes.
Now, you talked something about there being a trash can somewhere near the area where you're working.
Yes.
And you would have occasion, would you not, to look into that trash can to see, to throw things away, wouldn't you?
Well, I just use it to throw things away because the way the trash can is designed, you just throw it in the front and it just goes down. There's like a cover over it.
And you never heard any information about there being any luggage recovered from any trash cans near your area, did you?
No, not to my knowledge. I never heard anything about that.
Now, you said that when you saw Mr. Simpson on June the 12th, that he was wearing a jean-type shirt, wasn't he?
Yes.
And that shirt was not tucked into his pants, was it?
No.
And you recall that he had a white shirt on underneath that jean-type shirt? Do you recall that?
No, I just remember a light colored shirt.
Okay. Do you recall ever seeing him carrying an overcoat that evening?
I can't recall.
You don't recall that?
No, can't recall.
Now, there came a time, as you said, that Mr. Simpson gave you a tip for your services, did he not?
Yes.
And he gave you a $20 bill.
Yes, he did.
And you gave him back as change 2 5s, is that correct?
Yes.
Was that all the change that you then had in your possession? Do you recall?
I mean, I had other money on me, but I just, gave him 2 5s. I didn't want to count out singles.
And as he was walking away, did you have occasion to stare at him when he's walking away? Or were you handling other work?
No, I was just trying to get his bags on for him. And so the way you go is there's the escalator, and then behind the escalator there's a belt for oversized items like golf clubs and stuff. So, but realizing he was running a little, behind schedule, I just took him down the back way and walked him out half to the plane.
So after he gave you the tip, you then tried to rush to put the bags on that special belt for him.
Yes.
And you didn't focus your attention on him walking away from you going to the airplane.
I just, figured he went up to the plane because he had to
So
make the
you
flight.
really didn't have a chance to see what, if anything, he was carrying in his hand while you were putting the golf bag onto that special belt, did you?
Aside from the small little duffel bag.
Thank you very much. One moment, please.
Ms. Clark, can you redirect? Certainly.
I don't mean to be a burden. Is there anybody get more water? I'm thirsty.
Mrs. Robertson?
Your Honor, may we approach about some of these photographs?
Sure. Try to finish you this afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Okay. Good water here.
Thank you.
Beats that stuff outside, really.
I know, don't drink that stuff outside. I know.
Man, it
You have a
got
skull
cold,
and
then it got
crossbones
hot.
over that. Yeah,
Could have did a load of laundry in that water.
All
I
right,
know.
let's go. Ms. Clark.
If I may, Your Honor, I'd like to mark a series of photographs.
Starting with People's 150.
Thank you, Your Honor. People's 150 will be the photograph with the number 10 at the lower right-hand corner. 151 with the number 11 in the lower right-hand corner. 152 with the number 12 in the lower right-hand corner. 153 with the number 02 in the lower right-hand corner. And number 154 with the number 15 in the lower right-hand corner. And number 155 with the number 14
All right, so noted.
in the lower right-hand corner. Thank you.
Proceed.
All right, Mr. Williams, I just want to show you these pictures and ask you, you can tell us whether these pictures accurately depict the podium you worked at American Airlines, and the location of the trash can in relationship to that podium on the date of June the 12th, 1994. Okay?
Okay.
And for the record, I'm showing him the photographs I have just now marked as 150 through 155.
Hey, there's Kevin.
All right, now you've just seen 150 through 153. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Is that the way your work area looked at American Airlines on the date of June the 12th, 1994?
Yeah, it was darker, but yeah, that's it.
Because it was at night.
Yes.
And you described a trash can to your left and a little bit behind you where you work. Do you see it in that position in these photographs?
Yes.
And is that the position it was in on June the 12th, 1994?
Yeah.
Showing you now people's 154 and 155. Do these photographs accurately depict the trash can that is shown in the photographs that have been marked people's 150 through 153?
Yeah, that's the trash can.
And that's the way it looked on June the 12th, 1994 as well?
Yeah, that's the same way it looked.
Can you tell us, sir, if you know, how often do you strike that? Do you see a plastic insert in that trash can
Yes,
that's
I did.
depicted in all those photographs?
Yeah, the trash bag.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Do you know how often they change those plastic inserts?
No, I couldn't tell you. I see them change them. I don't know how often they do it. They just change them.
You just know that they do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mr. Douglas, the issues on this?
Really, there is a lost and found section at the airport, is there not?
Yes, there is.
So if luggage is left behind or lost, there's a location where it can all be taken, true?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams, you don't recall ever seeing Mr. Simpson anywhere near that trash can on June the 12th, do you, sir?
Yes, he was standing near the trash can.
Did you see him do anything with the trash can?
No, I didn't see him do anything with the trash can.
When Mr. Simpson was standing near the trash can, sir, did you happen to see whether he had any item of luggage or that black duffel bag on top of the trash can?
No, I didn't pay that much attention to see if he, where the bag was. It was on his arm.
Was your back to Mr. Simpson when he was standing near the trash can?
When he first came up, yes, I didn't even notice it was Mr. Simpson until I turned and asked the limo driver if he needed, if he wanted to check the baggage.
And when you took the baggage from the luggage carrier to put it onto your luggage carrier, onto your conveyor belt, would you be turning towards the trash can or away from it to do that?
I'd have to turn towards it.
Okay. And you have the pictures. Can you show us in the photograph, sir? Where is the conveyor belt that you would be putting the luggage on?
Which photograph you?
I'm sorry, I'm showing the witness People's 150.
I'd have to go in the door, and over here towards this way there's the escalator, and then right behind the escalator there's the big belt, and then there's some doorways that go out to the ramp. I just took the bags down there.
So would you carry them in by hand, or would you put them on some kind of a cart?
Usually I put them on a cart, but in that situation I just carried them in by hand.
Did you in this case carry them in by hand?
Yeah, they weren't that heavy.
Okay. So did you carry them in by hand before or after Mr. Simpson left your podium?
It probably would have to be. It was after he left. He was walking away, and I just grabbed the bags.
And walked them inside?
Yeah.
Do you know if those trash cans are emptied every night, sir?
Yes, they are. They're empty sometimes. They are emptied every night because when the trash truck comes around, it kicks out so many fumes. It's pathetic. Kills us every night. Get electric vehicles.
So that I'm clear, Mr. Williams. Mr. Simpson left the trash can area before you went around the corner to put the bags away.
Yeah, he's.
All right, Ms. Clark, do you want to hand the photographs to the jurors and allow them to pass it through so they can look at it?
What's that, John?
Asking Ms. Clark if she wants to hand these photographs to the jurors.
No,
In view of testimony, yeah.
Maybe close.
Sure. All right, thank you, Counsel. Mr. Douglas, you had two more questions?
Mr. Williams, just so that we're clear, the trash bags that go into the trash can that are shown in those exhibits are clear trash bags, are they not?
Yes.
And the location where that trash can is directly next to where you are standing checking in the bags, is it not?
Objection to state's testimony.
Well, I think
Speaks for itself, Your Honor.
sustain.
That is,
Sustain.
is the trash can directly next to the station where you're standing?
Yeah, same spot in the pictures, directly next to it and a little back.
So when people are standing and dealing with you, they are naturally standing next to the trash can?
Objection. It's over there standing.
Overruled.
Speculation.
Overruled. The photographs will speak for themselves.
Yeah, they stand anywhere. They can stand in front of it.
Nothing.
All right. Nope. Not at this point. Do you want to ask another question?
No, I just want to show the pictures.
No, we had an agreement that I was not aware of. Fine. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to take our recess for the afternoon, and I take it neither side has any further questions for Mr. Williams. As far as the jury is concerned, we'll stand in recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. All right, we'll take a 10-minute recess, and then I'll see counsel on the other evidentiary matters.
Obviously, we have the defendant's proposed set of objections in the DNA issues. However, a matter of some importance before collection witnesses testify is the letter that we sent this morning concerning what we believe are discovery abuses and recent matters that were turned over to the defense by the prosecution that we think is a clear discovery abuse and for which there ought to be sanctions and remedies. So the issue is, we think that's a serious matter that has to be resolved before the witnesses testify. Then there's the stipulation, proposed stipulation by the prosecution, and then there are the boards. So those are all the matters that I think we have to cover, and I know you have limited time, so tell us what you want.
All right, well, let's do the motion that was, let's start on the motion that was scheduled for this afternoon. The notice of objections to testimony concerning DNA evidence.
Maybe I ought to make one point about the discovery sanction. We sent a number of matters to the court in terms of the materials, but one that I think the court really has to look at is that we were provided with a videotape that we had been asking for a long time that was taken on June 13th at Rockingham. The way we knew about this a long time ago is that on that videotape that I think the court has of all the different clips we've seen from the services, there was a gentleman from the district attorney's office, or we thought, or police department, we didn't know where, taking a videotape. We just received a videotape from the prosecution of in panning the grounds and then an interior search or walkthrough of Mr. Simpson's residence at Rockingham. It's highly material and something that should have been turned over at the suppression hearings because it's relevant to those issues, would have been developed there in terms of search witnesses, in terms of their testimony, and there are a number of things that are perfectly apparent about it. Number one, there are things out all over in very important places. matters
Well,
of...
Mr. Scheck, forgive me for interrupting
Yeah.
you, but the issue before us today is your specific motion regarding Kelly
yes.
issues.
I understand. All that I'm saying is before the prosecution's next witnesses, the collection witnesses, Mazzola and Fung, testify, and people testify as to the collection of evidence at Rockingham.
Well, I have on my desk what appears to be a fax letter to the court.
That's right.
That mentions something about discovery sanctions, but in case you haven't noticed, I've been in session all day.
Oh, no, I understand that. That's why I'm bringing this one to your attention, because I know you want to hear about it. Because what we're going to ask you to do is take a
No, the
look at
point
the
I'm
tape.
making is I don't want to hear about it right now.
Okay. Bottom line is, we think it requires a hearing before these, outside the presence of the jury, before the witnesses testify.
Okay.
That's why I want you to know.
All right. Let's address the motion that you have on calendar for this afternoon.
My pleasure, Your Honor. What I would like to do first is a general introduction, and then explain what I'll address, and then defer to other counsel about the other issues. The first
Your
point...
time estimate for our entire argument on this on your side.
30 minutes.
All right. Proceed.
If I understand the prosecution's position correctly, what they're claiming is by withdrawing our initial Kelly Fry motion, we waive the right to contest whether or not correct scientific procedures were used in any of the DNA tests performed in the past or performed since the trial began, and tests that are still being performed as we speak. Whether correct scientific procedures were used, whether controls failed in the course of doing these tests, which are so material that they would invalidate the scientific merits of the tests, whether these tests were performed very, very badly, such that they should not come into evidence. They say we have waived our right to contest that under the third prong of Kelly Fry as an issue under 403 of the California Code or 405. They also claim that by withdrawing our Kelly Fry motion, we have waived our right to challenge under 352 the way DNA evidence is presented to the jury, particularly with respect to whether or not the statistical evidence is presented in a fashion that is misleading, unduly prejudicial, and should not be admitted under relevant case law. They indeed continue to insist that by withdrawing our motion, we cannot make objections under certain case law, People versus Sella, People versus Collins, that we cite in our papers. They claim that by withdrawing our motion, we have waived our right to cross-examine scientific witnesses from the prosecution about disputes within the scientific community concerning the reliability of the tests that they are going to offer to this jury, that we cannot talk about opinions of other leading scientists that would be generally relied upon by experts in the field, who are prominent scientists that were published in scientific journals, that we couldn't rely upon, for example, documents like the NRC report, or the fact that there's an NRC panel from the National Academy of Sciences considering many of the criticisms that we've raised here, that they convened another panel. They're saying that we can't go into anything with respect to those disputes in the scientific community because we withdrew our motion. They say that we cannot offer testimony with respect to testing procedures such as mitochondrial DNA because we withdrew our motion, when in fact, during opening statement, Ms. Clark referred to procedures that are done to identify the bodies that were found overseas of soldiers. In fact, one of the techniques that is used, in fact, the primary technique, as I understand it, that is used is mitochondrial DNA testing by one of the proposed prosecution witnesses, Major Victor Whedon. They say by withdrawing a motion, we can't offer testimony on that. Their position is that on our direct case, we do not have the right to present evidence again through our witnesses under appropriate sections of the California Evidence Code, I believe it's 801, concerning opinions of other scientists and their concerns, published and otherwise, about forensic DNA testing that are the kind that are relied upon reasonably by experts in the field. What would ordinarily come in as proper basis for an expert testimony, they say, we can't do that now because we withdrew this Kelly-Fry motion before. They have also made a motion in limine in which they, in effect, they say under 406, we can't attack the weight of the evidence and its reliability in this way because we withdrew our motion. They then propose this motion in limine where they say that we should be restricted in our cross-examination of prosecution witnesses about the views of Dr. Kary Mullis, the winner of the Nobel Prize in chemistry for the invention of the PCR technique, concerning his views on the application of PCR to forensics, such as was done in this case. And they concede in their papers that Dr. Mullis has testified on these matters. They have these transcripts, that their experts have looked at these transcripts and considered his views. They were before the court before. But they say that because we withdrew our motion, we can't cross-examine them about those. And they indeed go further and say that we can't cross-examine their witnesses about Dr. Mullis's views because his opinions have no value within the views they claim of their experts, although it's not in any way ever said that they're experts. There's no affidavits for any experts, or there's none named, because these experts believe that Dr. Mullis's lifestyle, Dr. Mullis's views on matters that are completely unrelated to this litigation, having to do with the etiology of AIDS and the HIV virus, are matters which discredit him.
Interesting theory.
I thought it was, we have problems with that because they say, on that basis, we can't raise his views with other witnesses, notwithstanding his winning the Nobel Prize about this technology. But what concerns us a great deal, Your Honor, is that we're about to enter the technical phase of the case. And you have issued an order to us, us lawyers, about how these matters should be litigated. And I pledge to you that we want to litigate these matters on the merits. In a highly professional fashion, tried to conduct myself in this fashion throughout these proceedings, in a difficult subject matter that's turgid and gives everybody headaches, I understand it. But we have great concerns. This case on national television, it's broadcast around the world. People are reluctant to come in as witnesses, lay people. You know, it applies to scientists too. And when motions are filed where personal attacks of this kind that I think don't even merit serious consideration, what it does is it serves notice to everybody. If you want to come in here and talk about science, if you want to talk about real issues, well, you better be prepared to be put under a microscope and have your entire character subject to attack. And we think that's very unfair. We think that's intimidating to scientists. We think that's not the way this should be conducted, and we object to it. Now, what I propose to do, Your Honor, is at this point go through the objections that we made, our notice of objections, and deal with the prosecution's response to that. And then I'm going to defer to Professor Thompson to address the motion in limine issue. And then if we have time, we could move on to the stipulation which Mr. Blaser would discuss, and then the demonstration boards which Mr. Neufeld would discuss. The first point I'd like to make about our notice of objections is that we tried to design this in such a way to indicate to the court what issues we think you have to decide before the witnesses testify, what issues we think can only be decided after you hear expert testimony from both sides. And what I'd first like to discuss is the prosecution's contention that by withdrawing the DNA motion when we did, that we have explicitly given a blanket waiver to all the various legal challenges that we've given notice we want to pursue. And the matters that I want to discuss first are the prong 3, 352, 350, Collins, Sella challenges. And, Judge, I'm sure you'll appreciate it. Yes, we have done a chart that I would offer to the court. Can I just walk over? Okay. That essentially diagrams our brief and our various objections.
Very similar then to my chart, diagramming
Well, I don't know.
the arguments.
The one you wouldn't give me
case
the other
law.
day, and the one that has the tentative rulings on it. I hope it's similar. Here. Okay. Now, the first point that the prosecution makes is that they say the day that we withdrew our motion, we explicitly waived all legal challenges, including the prong 3 challenges and all the ones that I've listed on this chart as grounds for objection that go beyond the first prong of Kelly-Frye. And then they cite two sections of the record. And I'm sure the court remembers it, and the court reporter remembers it. But at the moment that this was done, there actually was, I heard, and I know we corrected it, a small error in the record or on the live notes, and that Mr. Simpson did not use the word waiver, he used the word motion. But that's not really the point. The point was that at the time that this was done, inconsistent with what the prosecution put in its brief, it was absolutely clear that Mr. Simpson was discussing, and we had proffered to the court, our withdrawal motion, which had very specific grounds as to what we withdrew and why we withdrew it. And that's what he was referring to. And then the court acknowledges this on page 10281 and says that you indicate that it was your understanding that Mr. Simpson was referring to the document that had been drafted, the withdrawal motion. And it's also clear from the record that we had discussed with Mr. Simpson the prosecution's proposed questions, and obviously they had their view at that time as to the significance of the withdrawal. But that's nothing that we explicitly acknowledged or believed to be true, and I'm sure the court realized at that time, I think you even indicated it, that one day we would visit the question of grounds for objections beyond prong 1, certainly with respect to the testing that had been done up to that point. So the prosecution's position that we explicitly waived in a blanket fashion all these challenges, I think has no merit and is backed up by the record. We should also note the factors, I won't repeat them because the court remembers them well, that went into that withdrawal motion, and that we wanted to raise prong 1 challenges, and we think by withdrawing the motion when we did, what we waived was we waived our right to attack outside the presence of the jury all DNA test results that had been done up to that point, that we had received results from. That's what we think we waived. We asked the court in December to consider a procedure whereby we could litigate the prong 1 issues during the course of trial, having the prosecution present its DNA witnesses in exactly the fashion that they ordinarily would. Any witness that they felt they needed for foundation could be taken outside the presence of the jury, work on a Saturday or on a down day, whatever else, and that we would present witnesses. And then at the end of the trial, the court could consider striking testimony and give instructions to the jury, and we would waive the prejudice of having that bell rung and then unrung if we prevailed on any of those claims. The court declined our proposal at that time, indicating that you didn't feel we were sufficiently concrete about it and stating other reasons, and you just declined to do it. But we think we waived just at that point the right to do prong 1 challenges outside the presence of the jury, and we didn't waive any of the challenges that we've outlined here. So that was their first argument, waiver, blanket waiver, explicit waiver, which I don't think is supported by the record and our withdrawal motion. The second argument now is that that the prosecution officers is that they say under California law that you must do prong 3 challenges, 352 challenges, challenges that we think, governed by Barney, Wallace, and Pizarro. The Collins challenges, this notion of independence. People versus Sella, this notion of quantifying all the relevant variables accurately, that all those have to be done pre-trial through a Kelly-Frye hearing, and they cannot be done during the course of trial by making objections. When we actually get the results and we see how the tests are performed. We don't think that that's correct. We don't think there's any basis in the law for that. And in fact, the prosecution seems to be going further. They seem to be taking the position that they are free, because of our withdrawal of the motion, to present any DNA evidence in any form, literally scientific garbage if they want, to the jury, without any limitations by the court or any right by the defense to object to foundations. We don't think that that makes any sense, and we don't think that's the law. It's very revealing to us that the prosecution in its papers does not even bother to make a point-by-point response to our various objections. They just say, blanket waiver, and you either do it in a Kelly-Frye hearing before the jury, or you can't waive these third-prong challenges, these 352 challenges, and the other challenges. We don't think that makes any sense. Now, in terms of these objections, what we would propose to the court is that there's only really 2 of them, maybe 3 of them, that have to be resolved before the witnesses testify. And those are, what I would say in our list is, number 1, presenting DNA evidence to the jury without statistics, and number 2, suggestions that DNA tests provide unique identification. A related issue, I think, is the second to last entry in our chart, the prosecutor's fallacy. But let me just address this first point, because I think it's an absolutely essential one, and it's one that highlights the way the prosecution is proceeding here, that I think has been unfair and abusive in terms of way DNA evidence ought to be presented, and a matter that I think is of extraordinary consequence in terms of how this kind of evidence is going to be presented to juries from this point forward, not just in this courtroom, I think, but across the country, indeed across the world. What is DNA evidence and what isn't it? What is its real significance? How can courts structure the presentation of this evidence so that juries are not misled and they take it in the proper context for exactly what it's worth and what it's not worth? This is a very vexing question. This is one the National Academy of Sciences has opined on. As you saw from the papers we submitted, it's one that they're still struggling with, and it's also an issue that all the legal and scientific commentators are commenting on. This isn't simple, but I think that there are certain points that have already been established in the case law of this state and other jurisdictions and within the scientific community that people take as clearly appropriate. And so we urge the court to think about this very carefully. This is the argument. Number 1, I think it's absolutely clear from Barney, and I cite Barney, Wallace, and Pizarro because at this point, I think that's all we can cite. The recent actions of the California Supreme Court in taking Venegas and putting a grant and hold on Soto on Wilds, which was a different position than we were in when we began this trial, makes that the governing precedent. But under any precedent, DNA evidence is statistical, and you should not be able to present this evidence without statistics. Now, the prosecution has already done that in the opening statement, where Ms. Clark went on saying, here's a bloodstain, match. Here's a bloodstain, match. Then, in the examination of Detective Van Adder, in the course of a discovery violation, and I think the record's clear in a way that I think was purposeful, she elicited from him the testimony, there were scrapings taken from under Nicole Brown Simpson's fingernails, and DNA tests were done, and the conclusion was, that is her blood. Now, that's not what DNA tests show. They give you results which have gene frequencies. And that's what they show. They say this is the gene frequency of the profile. And nobody would suggest that we're at a point now where those tests in particular, those PCR-based tests, could ever reach the conclusion that would satisfy any scientist that's her blood. Now, the law is clear in Barney that you cannot present this evidence without presenting statistics. You can't say it's just a match and not present statistics. But that's precisely what the prosecution has done so far in this proceeding. And it's not like they don't know what they're doing, Your Honor. They have all the people here in California that have been from the very beginning trying to engineer the admission of this evidence in favor of the prosecution, the proponents of it, and they know the law. And what's very interesting is that Ms. Clark, in an article by one of our brethren, Professor Richard Lempert, that we've cited, actually takes to task Ms. Clark's arguments in another case where she argued DNA evidence, and she did the very same thing. And that's noted in our papers. Now, that's unfairly prejudicial. So what are we proposing? What we're proposing is that as I think is the law, the evidence has to be presented in the form of statistics gene frequencies. But that's not all. If you agree with us, and you can see that that must be the way it's done because that is the law, then we deal with another question, and that is, what kind of preliminary instruction will this court give to the jury about these statistics? This, we think, is the most important point if you go with us the next step. And that is make them put it in the form of statistics. Because what the jury ought to be instructed is that what they're about to hear are statistical estimates about gene frequencies. And that they should be instructed that those gene frequency estimates do not represent the false positive error rates of the laboratory. They do not represent a probability about sample handling mistakes within a laboratory. They do not represent probabilities about false matches arising from cross-contamination in the collection of samples. And they do not represent probabilities as to whether or not evidence was tampered with. And they do not represent probabilities of guilt. And I think that the jury has to be instructed on exactly what it is and what it isn't. And we would, if you agree with us that it must be statistical, then we will present to you a preliminary instruction on this point that we think is essential to give the jury guidance about what they're going to hear, what it means, and what it doesn't mean. And these are issues that we raised in our initial briefs and people are writing about. There's an article that I would call to your attention that has just been published in Jurimetrics that was initially cited in our papers in its unpublished form by Dr. Jay Kohler concerning errors and exaggerations in the presentation of DNA evidence. And the research that Dr. Kohler has done and others in this field is that if you present, he did a study where you they did a mock case, and the jury of college students essentially was presented DNA evidence about a gene frequency of 1 in a billion, and then they were asked, given the evidence they saw, would they vote guilty or innocent? Then they were given the 1 in a billion gene frequency statistic, and they were also given a false positive error rate, something on the order of 1 in 200. And the jury reached exactly the same conclusion when they had both statistics, as opposed to just having the 1 in a billion statistics alone. In other words, it didn't affect it at all. On the other hand, if you gave them the statistics of just the false positive error rate, they would reach a completely different verdict. There was a significant effect. Now, what that reflects, Your Honor, is a rich literature, psychological literature, that we're prepared to put on testimony about, having to do with the naivete that lay people have, many of us have, about statistics, and about how easily people can be confused and misled and prejudiced by the presentation of statistics. There's a rich literature in this field. And what will not ordinarily be understood by people is that if you have a false positive error rate, for example, of 1 in 200, or 1 in 243, I think was the last one that Cellmark offered for itself, then the chances, for example, that a particular test result is a false positive is 1 out of 243. And the gene frequency of 1 in a billion is irrelevant, or so we would argue, or at least people should understand that argument, or understand that it's one that's available to them. Now, they have to understand that distinction, and they shouldn't be confusing the gene frequency statistic with anything other than what it is, and be free to understand and consider the other evidence in the case. And it's critical that jurors understand that.